Good afternoon, good afternoon. Let me see. Right. Procurement Tangadine, good afternoon to you. Blessed afternoon. Wazid, good afternoon to you. Michelle Nero, good afternoon as well. Hi, Diane. Pauline Buckmeyer. Hi, Pauline. Good afternoon. Jeremy Lewis, Sarah Richards, Muy Bendita. Larry McMillan, June Austin, Rural Planet. Good afternoon to all of you. Curtis Dalzine. Kathy Ann Best. Slightly Show. Anne-Marie Brooks, Marissa Guevara, Pamela Moses, good afternoon to all of you. Beverly Jones, hi. Gail Lee, Susan Katugan, Natalie F. Cohen Henderson. User YD9LB says the government do not show what is a non-contentious debate. Indeed. Henry Amsterdam. Mubendita is saying the celebration of the anniversary of winning the election. So that's typical UNC. You all may recall when they won in 2010, every year they would have this big celebration to mark the 24th of May or to commemorate never see come see or never thought. And here they are again in office, never thought that they would have gotten back into office, got so by a fluke. And so they're going to have another celebration again. Of course, the usual suspects wouldn't ask where the money is coming from for this celebration. They probably say the finances, and I wouldn't doubt that too, because they have ways and means of getting back their money, right? Because big money is on the way. Well, all now because of the increase in oil and gas prices, and then come next year when all of the energy deals that the PNM would have negotiated will be coming on stream. Yeah, so it's plenty money to give away, contracts, big contracts to give away, and so on. So look out for that. Yeah, so I had to jump off again early today too, folks, because we still have some events taking place in the constituency. Some persons who didn't have their events over the Easter weekend because there were so many other events taking place and they didn't want to get swamped. So, and then there was, of course, a rain last weekend. So some people would have postponed their events to this weekend, and I would have gotten some invitations. So just as last week, when I came off, I had to go to about three different events that were hosted in the constituency for Easter. And so Councillor Joycelyn Worrell had one, and then there was also one at Bellamy Street where the village council, so they had an event there, and then there was another event as well in, I think it was Malabar Phase 3 or Phase 4, thereabouts. So let me jump on. So much to talk about. User YD9 is saying Parliament is getting hard to watch. Trust me, it's as hard to sit in that Parliament as it is to watch. Because Friday was one of those days where, one of the many days where sometimes I just feel to pick up my briefcase and walk out. All right. The member for Barataria Sanwan was being his usual obnoxious self. I was surprised that the speaker would have admonished both himself, Saddam Hussein, and Sean Sobers. Right? But I think Saddam really got under Camille's skin when he made that statement about Adrian Leon's. And again, as an attorney at law, you ought to know better. Innocent until proven guilty, right? You ought to know what is merely allegations. As far as I know, Adrian Leon's has not been charged with anything. I don't even know if he's under police investigation on any matter. It's been over a year since that whole issue arose. But to come in the parliament and use the cover of parliamentary privilege to say all of the things that he said. And then he did say, Saddam Hussein, that is, he said that the member for Aruka Maloney had nothing to say about that, while she was in government suggesting that there was wrongdoing on the part of Adrian Leons, suggesting that Camille Robinson Regis may have been away and did nothing about it or said nothing about it. And that is what she objected to. And of course, the speaker said, well, there was nothing to impugn your integrity and this and that, and he didn't impugn anything and any improper motives. He did when he suggested that she remain quiet amid any information in the public domain with respect to something that, as far as we know, is not even the subject of police investigation. But meanwhile, you have at least 3 of his colleagues sitting to his immediate left who are before the courts for one matter, or who are the subject of police investigations for one matter or another. One is out on $1 million bail, another one is the subject of a civil suit for hundreds of millions of dollars with allegations of bid rigging and fraud and conspiracy and the like. And then his very good partner down to the end of the bench, who is, as far as we know, since 2020 has been the subject of a police investigation with respect to 2 checks that he issued for the Prime Minister, well, when she was Prime Minister then, for totaling $135,000, which he could not explain, and he couldn't remember what that was for. He's also supposed to be under police investigation for allegations that he would have attempted to hide money in his mother's bank account and as well in her insurance policies as lump sum payments. So when they want to come and talk about PNM and who was involved and that thing and all kind of rubbish, all right? Yeah, they need to stop throwing stones. What they say about people who live in glass houses? Yeah, well, they're living in a glass mansion, a glass palace. So they need to check this out. Let me see. Rockman is saying, what is there to celebrate? All the people you fired, no independence, and most of all giving friends and family work. So true. So I came across, I wanted to play something first, right? Before I get into the hot topic. Let me see. Yeah, the hot topic that keeps, or the gift that keeps on giving, if you want to call it that. All right, so let me just get this here. So I saw a clip of the Minister of Homeland Security, Roger Alexander, seeking to give the public an update as to what the government is doing with regards to the crime fight, right? Yeah, fighting crime and so on. And as he describes it, it's a work in progress. We are in the 12th month of their tenure, of their 5-year tenure. So 1/5 of their tenure is almost over. And fighting crime is still a work in progress. Right? After we were told when he was sworn in back in May last year that in 6 months' time, don't worry, we'll have a comprehensive crime plan for you guys and crime would be down. So don't worry all yourself. Then we've seen over the last 12 months is all kind of different things that we hear in. We went from state of emergency, ZOSO, bill, and all of that. But listen to the goodly minister, my colleague from Tunapuna.
If your house was leaking in 2016 and if your house was leaking in 2016 and it is leaking still in 2024, you want me just to walk in and start to fix the holes immediately? But then if you didn't fix it in 2016, the hole might have been this, and then it become this over the years. That's all. And this is difficult. So that is all I'm saying now. Let us be real about this. Right? I'm saying to you, it's a work in progress. You see how many things are happening at the Ministry of Homeland Security? You know why? Because I am a go-getter. This government will not sit idly by and watch things continue. But again, it's a work in progress.
So it's a work in progress. The anti-crime fight, the crime fight, however you want to put it, it's a work in progress. In the meantime, citizens continue to lose their lives. Their campaign came into office on, we have the solutions to crime, blah, blah, blah. We have the answers to crime, blah, blah, blah. Put us in office. The PNM lacks the political will to fight crime. Fitzgerald Hines is just be sleeping on himself in the parliament. Rowley don't want to fight crime. They don't know what to do. They're beset. They have no ideas, whatever, right? They've basically given up. They are part of the problem. But put us in office and we will fix it. And the benchmark that they continue to use in terms of the crime fight was the 626 murders that took place in 2024. Was it? Record. Right? They will never speak about what they did to contribute to that in terms of their failure to support legislation that the PNM attempted to bring between 2016 to 2025. I note the minister mentioned 2 years. He said, if your house leaking in 2016 and then 2024, no mention of 2015 and no mention of 2025. Why? Because the UNC was in power for 2/3 of, well, 2/3, sorry, of 2015, and then they were also in power for 2/3 of 2025. So we don't want to reference those 2 years and the crime that would have taken place while they were in office. No, we're only going to reference the full years that the PNM was in office, from 2016 to 2025. All right, 2024, sorry. So the house was leaking, the roof was leaking 2016 to 2024. And to imply that you did nothing. Let me play that one more time. Forgive me, you guys. I know some of you are difficult to listen to.
If your house was leaking in 2016 and it is leaking still in 2024, you want me just to walk in and start to fix the holes immediately? But then if you didn't fix it in 2016, the hole might have been this, and then become this over the years. That's all. And this is difficult. So that's all I'm saying now. Let us be real about this. Right? I'm saying to you, it's a work in progress. You see how many things are happening at the Ministry of Homeland Security? You know why? Because I am a go-getter. This government will not sit idly by and watch things continue. But again, it's a work in progress.
So we had about 100 murders for the year, almost one a day. And if we're behind, because we were running at 1 a day up until maybe last week, and they get a little reprieve, maybe 1 or 2 days. So if we are behind now, in terms of the number of days vis-a-vis the number of murders, you know what will happen, as we've seen in the last few weeks, you'll probably have a double or triple murder taking place to catch up now, because apparently the criminals have the view they need to remain on quota or surpass quota. Meanwhile, as he says, the government is not sitting idly by. So what exactly are you all doing other than the state of emergency? So he gives that analogy about if your house leaking and your roof leaking in 2016 and it's still leaking in 2024. I want to remind the goodly minister that he, prior to becoming Minister of Homeland Security, was a member of the TTPS. For a period of that time between 2016, a short period between 2016 and 2024, he was on suspension, right? Having been charged with assault and I believe other things. And he did have a matter before the court, and he was on suspension for a period of time. And there were questions with respect to his mental health, because we were seeing videos on social media, which he recorded of himself in the gym, ringing bell at home, and his head tie up and all kind of craziness. And we were wondering if Alexander had lost it. But I want to remind the goodly minister that while they're talking about if your house leaking between 2016 and 2024, you all came into office in 2025 claiming that you had flash ban, claiming that you had new galvanized sheets, you had new roofing, you had the expertise to fix the roof. And 1 year later, you haven't done anything. Nothing. Yeah, you had everything you need, all the tools, all the equipment, everything that we need. all the material we needed to fix the roof. Just put us in office. And now you're coming to tell us you're having problems. But you, sir, between 2019 to 2025, before you resigned from the TTPS, you were one of the foremen who was tasked with the responsibility to fix the roof. You, as a senior member of the TTPS, were one of the foremen, one of the supervisors who was tasked with the responsibility of supervising the workers whose responsibility it was to fix the roof. When you were on suspension, you were Sergeant Alexander. After the case was dropped and you came off of suspension, we saw your meteoric rise in terms of the number of promotions you got. You went from Sergeant Alexander to Inspector Alexander to Superintendent Alexander to Senior Superintendent Alexander in the space of about, what, 5 years? In that time, you were appointed the head of the SORT, right? That was the specialist unit that was created by Gary Griffith, the specialist unit that was credited with capturing the two men who were alleged to have been responsible for the kidnap and the murder of Andrea Barrett. That SORT, when Gary Griffith demitted office as Commissioner of Police and McDonald Jacob took over in the early days, Minister Alexander, was appointed to lead that entity. And he had a lot to say about what we could expect with his leadership of that entity. Let me remind you all. Let me remind you, so in case the goodly minister is forgetting. And this article is dated the 29th of April, 2021, almost 5 years ago to the day. Alexander, appointed to head the Special Operations Response Team, warns criminals. Superintendent Roger Alexander has been appointed new head of the Special Operations Response Team, sought and has promised to bring a difference. Alexander's appointment was announced during yesterday's TTPS weekly media briefing by Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. Griffith also revealed former head Mark Hernandez was immediately sent on suspension leave given the charges laid against him with respect to the the issue with the same Andrea Barrett matter, right? Speaking immediately after the announcement, Alexander said that SORT at this time required experienced policing and bringing the public closer, because we see what is happening now with the proliferation of guns and ammunition in our country. We have to do something different. What we already have, we will tweak on it. We add to it to give the public the trust and confidence that all is well. Asked if he would still be the host of the TTPS show Beyond the Tape, Alexander replied with a smirk, "Everything we do must be accounted for. That is the story of the TTPS. That must not change." Asked what was the criteria in Alexander's appointment, Griffith said he had his reasons. Right. Let me see here. In 2019, as an inspector, Alexander faced an assault case with Constable Sheldon Mires. The case was later discharged and so on. But we go on. Not Griffith. I want to quote Alexander. In a brief interview with A New Direction, this is Alexander, a new direction we will be looking at in terms of training and development, not just training in weapons tactics, but training on a whole in terms of different aspects of policing. Then it gives someone broader shoulders to tote the weight, meaning that we are not timid when coming to any situation involving policing that confronts us. We'll be able to treat with every situation, so that has to do with training and development from other agencies within the TTPS. Asked what are his targets specifically when it comes to crime, Alexander replied, gangs, guns, persons who import in guns, gang warfare, and when I say gangs, it speaks to those getting together for home invasions, robberies, shootings, and murders. All those persons in that circle, but at the same time, finding the way to protect our citizens so they can sleep at night and go about their lawful business day by day. Asked if he had a message for the criminals and the law-abiding citizens, Alexander asked for law-abiding citizens to support law enforcement, just as he's asking the public to do now. For the criminal element, you continue to chastise persons, shoot, rob, kill, home invasion, rape, and you want to do this on a daily basis, every night, and then you must go home to your bed and sleep after you distress persons. Make everyone sometimes 10 victims for the night. Victims of crime because of your behavior, and you want to go home and to your bed and rest. I suggest that you sleep with your eyes open constantly, because you never know when we will come knocking. Or sometimes we might not come through the front door. We might hit you as Santa Claus and come to the roof. I thought Santa used to come down the chimney. I didn't know he used to come to the roof, but okay. I hear you. I hear you, Xander. So when I hear this man talking about your house leaking from 2016 to 2024, and if you had fixed the leak, and it would have been so. Again, sir, you were one of the 4 men, right? Because when you demitted, when you left the TTPS, you were among the top brass. As senior superintendent, I think there was just a couple of positions. Forgive me, I'm not too familiar with the rankings of the TTPS top brass, but I think after senior superintendent is what? ACP? And you have DCP and commissioner and so on. So he was up there. He was in charge. After SORT was disbanded, he was made the head of, I think it was the Port of Spain division, which is one of the divisions where you have the most amount of crime, right? Port of Spain division, he was in charge. El Capo, the Tutti Capi. So you were the foreman, you were the supervisor to ensure that the workers who were tasked with the responsibility of fixing the roof, right, caulking the leak, that they do their work. So when you come and talk about 2016 to 2024, and we know what the intention of that was, to cast it on the PNM, and so the PNM didn't do what they were supposed to do between 2010 and 2015 to 2025. And so now you all came into office, and this was the problem that you met, and it's a work in progress, and we can't fix it overnight, and we can't fix it in 6 months, and we can't fix it in a year, and then 2030 will come and it will be the same situation. You'll say, well, we still a work in progress. Because the mess that the PNM left the crime situation in, it needs more than 5 years to fix. But when you all were campaigning last year, you weren't telling the population that. You gave the population the impression that, hey, in a matter of weeks, 6 months, crime will not be an issue. Everything will go to Trinidad and Tobago will be a land overflowing with milk and honey. So my colleague from Tunapuna needs to understand that you too must shoulder some of the blame, sir, for 2016 to 2024. Because last I checked, the Prime Minister has no power to arrest anybody. The Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, no member of government has the power to arrest, the power to investigate anybody. That is the work of the TTPS. And again, I make the point, when Gary Griffith was the Commissioner of Police, and it seemed as if we had turned a corner with respect to crime, and the TTPS appeared to be functioning, and there was confidence in the TTPS. Nobody was saying, good job for Gerald Hines. Nobody was saying, good job Stuart Young. Nobody was saying, good job Keith Rowley. Nobody was saying, good job PNM. No, it was Gary this and Gary that and Gary and Gary. Gary was the best thing since sliced bread. Heaven sent. The best thing ever to happen to the TTPS and by extension, crime fighting in Trinidad and Tobago. Gary had all the answers and all the solutions. Nobody was giving credit to the government. But as soon when Gary left office and so on, right, everybody wanted to blame Hines. Nobody was asking for crime plan from the minister and the government and the Prime Minister when Gary was Commissioner of Police. So it goes to show, if in fact there is validity in the claim that under Gary Griffith as Commissioner of Police, crime was under control, it shows the TTPS has the ability and the wherewithal to bring crime under control. It's just a matter of who is at the top, the management, and how they treat with those who are immediately below them, the top brass, all the divisional heads and so on. Gary Griffith was holding them accountable. So when the TTPS doing good is the commissioner and the TTPS. When they ain't doing good, blame the government and blame the minister. And that is what the PNM endured. So, my good friend, Xander, Member of Parliament for Tunapuna, Minister of Homeland Security, sir, you too must shoulder a portion of the blame if in fact you are saying that nothing was done between 2016 and 2024 or precious little was done. You didn't need directive, because when you woke up every morning and you put on your police uniform, right, and you put on your khaki suit and your Gideon boots and you went out there to do your job that you were receiving a salary for 33 1/3, You did the Minister of National Security and the Prime Minister didn't have to call you and say, Alexander, this is your roster for today. This is what your duties are for today. You have to go here, there, and there. They didn't tell you that. Right? You didn't receive any orders from anybody in the government. It's whoever was your superior, who you reported to, and whoever they reported to at the time, they are the ones who were responsible. Right? So if the roof wasn't fixed, because the government, their responsibility is to give you the tools and the equipment and all of the material that you need to fix the roof. So if they were doing that, and when you go out on the work, you ain't doing what you're supposed to do. Or let's sit down and talking rubbish whole day. Right? You just linemen chilling, you do a little thing, and then we call that judge. Go down by the bar afterwards, and we knock back a few beers, and we laugh, and we talk. And yeah. Whose fault is that? So, you are in an unenviable position. You are the last person who should talk about 2016 to 2024 and fixing any roof as it pertains to an analogy with respect to crime. Tell us, what did you do? As a senior police officer, as the head of SORT at one time, and as the head of the Port of Spain Division, what did you do in those roles as senior superintendent, as sergeant, as inspector, as superintendent? What did you do in those roles for the time that you occupied those positions to treat with the crime fight? To fix the roof, to ensure that the leak didn't get bigger. What did you do? What did your colleagues of similar and higher rank do to fix the roof? Or did you all go to work every day and just watch the material on the ground and say tomorrow for that? All right. Just thought I would throw that out there. So there were a number of things that happened last week. When you have a government that is beleaguered, beset with challenges, having made 1,010,000 promises to the population, faced now with the reality that a lot of the people who voted for them and some who didn't vote for them are now regretting their decisions. Almost every day they are bombarded on social media with videos from people who voted for them, people who are chastising them, saying they want back their vote, they didn't vote for this. Even a lot of their own supporters now. Some of the hardcore supporters and activists who are very present on social media and are still are, but now challenging them. So what do they do? After 11 months and what it is? 12 days in office with little to show. Every little thing that is now coming to fruition that was started and initiated under the People's National Movement that is now bearing fruit, this government wants to take credit for. And I reference two things in particular that took place this past week. One was the arrival of 6 fire tenders, 6 fire trucks, which the government had the pleasure of distributing this past week. And they needed the whole cabinet to come to attend that. So clearly these ministers had no work to do. But everybody could have left their posts in the ministry and go down to Penal or wherever it is they went to witness the commissioning of these fire trucks. And so, of course, there is the public debate between PNM and UNC as to who was responsible for ordering these fire tenders and the like. And of course, the UNC wants to give the impression that they did that in the last 10 months. Now, anybody who could just go and do a quick, let me see, boy. Yeah, anybody who could do a quick search of how long it takes to order a fire truck. It's not that difficult to come by, right? Let me see if I get this here. Okay, yes. Search. Right. Some of these people need to make Google their friend, or whatever is your search engine of choice. Let me see if I get it here. How long does it take to purchase a fire truck? Well, according to Google AI, purchasing a custom fire truck currently takes 2 to 4 years. 2 to 4 years, not 6 to 12 months, with some specialized apparatus requiring over 36 months, 3 years, primarily due to industry-wide production backlogs, supply chain challenges, and specialized customization requirements. While pre-built or stock units can sometimes be acquired faster, over 12 months, the entire process from planning to delivery is extensive. Planning and specifying often takes 1 year to form committees, determine the needs, and finalize specifications. Procurement and bidding, the competitive bidding process, can add a further 3 months to the process or more. Manufacturing actual build times are frequently 18 to 24 months, with some specialized apparatus taking even longer, says Fire Apparatus magazine. Factors impacting time: supply chain delays. Components like axles, chassis, and electronic components can have massive back orders because apparently the UNC supporters don't know. The fully dones are not aware of the fact. All right, at Trinidad and Tobago, we don't make fire trucks here. All right, and we aren't the only country with the need for fire tenders. And I'm not aware that you have so many manufacturers of fire tenders. I don't think you could go on Amazon and order a fire truck, and it comes and then they bring it for you and leave it in front of your door. I don't think that's how it works. All right, we understand that equipment such as these, specialized equipment such as these, there's a process, particularly as it pertains to the tendering and so on. Right? Because look what happened in Tobago, where they just said, we're going to buy some ambulances, man. We need ambulances. What happened? That fiasco with the ambulances that were purchased. And when they arrived on the island, only to realize, oh, they're not suitable to the geography of Tobago because they're catching the tail to drive up hill and all kind of madness. So we ended up with these ambulances that just had to be packed up because they could not be used because somebody figured, well, ambulance is ambulance. It don't matter, just buy it, whatever. It could work anywhere. I'm not understanding that there is a process that you had to go through. Right? And it's the same thing with the fire truck. Because our fire trucks, as far as I know, are right-hand drive. Okay? Right-hand drive. So even that too would limit where it is you could purchase your fire trucks from. But listen to this clown.
All these years as an activist prior to coming into government, standing up outside fire stations, Woodbrook, Pinal, Mayaro, begging the then government for fire equipment for our good men and women in the fire service. I remember I was in the fire headquarters when the children burned to death in Rockrinok, and I went there to complain. That was the same day the divers got trapped in the barrier pipeline. We've been fighting for this for so long, and look what's happening today. In less than 1 year, look at what this government has done. Kamla Prasad says so. Well done, thank you.
In less than 1 year. Now, mind you, when the Prime Minister went to Washington last year, September last year, when she went to the UN General Assembly in New York and then went on to Washington when she got the Kobo Sweat OFAC license, which has now expired, she came back. She said while she was in New York, she met with Chinese delegation and they pledged $94 million to Trinidad and Tobago. And she said a part of that was going to be used to purchase fire trucks. Right? Now, I don't think the Chinese walk with a check for $94 million and say they make it out to Kamla Prasad Bisesha and say, yeah, look, 94,000. I don't think they came with a bag with $94 million in cash and say, look. So they would have had to have been. I don't think when she went to the UN, when she went to New York, that was on the agenda. So perhaps coming out of whatever discussion she would have had, expressing what are some of the needs of Trinidad and Tobago, that would have come about. So there's a process, right? You have to meet with the ambassador, they come back to Trinidad and so on, and those are the diplomatic channels and whatever. So she didn't come back to Trinidad with a check on the 30th of September, so with a check for $94 million in hand. So that's September. So October, November, December, January, February, March. We're in April. So 6 months. In 6 months, you all were able to order 6 fire trucks that suit the topography and the geography of Trinidad and Tobago with all the specifications that you all need. Did you go through a tender process? Because we have procurement legislation now, and these things must go through the office of the procurement regulator. We just say, hey, we want 6 fire trucks. Hey, what go on order 6 fire trucks. We know what is the UNC track record when it comes to fire trucks. We don't need to throw our minds back to 2010, 2015 when they spent $10 million or so to retrieve a fire truck that went over a precipice somewhere up in Blanchisseuse. And when it is that you had a contractor who said, salvage, I was listen, that fire truck, that's it. It's not coming back from that. We could salvage it. We could go down there and we could bring it out. $25,000. Nah, we were 10 million. 10 million, going once, going twice, we taking that. You want 25,000 rocks over that. That's their track record when it comes to fire trucks. 2010 to 2015, how many fire tenders did they purchase? None. They built a whole set of fire stations all over the place. And rushing just on the heels of the 2015 general election, not wanting Keith Rowley's name or anybody from the PNM's name to be on the plaque for these fire stations that they built, they rushed to open and commission these fire stations, never mind the fact that they weren't open. Right? I recall the Mayaro fire station that during the commissioning ceremony, while they were there and they had all the fancy speeches and so on, it read Mayaro fire station. By the time they left, the last car drive out of the fire station yard, it was now the Mayo fire station. Why? Because the letters fall off. The contractor, in his haste to ensure that the fire station was ready for this commissioning ceremony, used duct tape. You all remember that? Duct tape to stick the letters on to read Mayaro fire station. And with the hot sun and so on, unfortunately, the event ended in time. That it held up until, and then the letters started to fall off, and it ended up the Mayo fire station. So they built all of these fire stations all over the place, about 6 or 7 of them, and bought no equipment, no fire tenders, nothing. That is what the PNM inherited when they came in. Fire stations that were not ready to be opened, right? Because you didn't have sufficient personnel. You needed fire officers to put in these fire stations, and you needed the apparatus and the equipment for these fire stations we didn't have. So the PNM had to procure that at a time when money was low, because when the PNM came in, oil prices had already dipped significantly, and they came in facing a deficit, being told by the central bank governor, well, yeah, I don't have enough money to run the country for the next 3 days, and I am going to turn off the tap. But this clown who goes to work, well, I was going to say he goes to work every day, but unless he has an office, the Ministry of Housing has an office in West Mall, then he doesn't go, well, he's not at work every day, right? So he is another one drawing salary under false pretense. As he told Penny back in October last year, he feels greatly underutilized in that ministry. Well, over the last couple of months, he seems to have found his footing. So all of us, he's the hatchet man for HTC. So if it is that you own an HTC property and you have done any construction or additions to your property that is in contravention of your lease, then he will come and with the team and threaten you and let you know, break it down, otherwise we will break it down for you. He is the man who, he going up on the beach, Maracas Beach, because he's the great mediator under the PNM. These umbrella vendors and these beach chair vendors were allowed to get away with murder, but it wouldn't happen under the UNC. And so he gone up there with I think it was Colin Gosain and whoever else. Yeah, Colin is from that ministry. So they went to mediate, and yes, we sat down and we had very productive discussions with the vendors and the chair rental and the umbrella rental people, and we came to an agreement. And so you see, that is what dialogue can do. And afterwards, they were so happy that I came and speak to them. And then 2 weeks later, the guys are right back. The nuisance is back. And now Ivex coming out talking about, well, I know if they can't hear, they will feel, and so on. And you can have some people who just can't be reasoned with, and so on. But you went up there and tell the people, hey, you tell the country, yeah, problem solved, don't worry, yourself, come to the beach, like yourself. Whatever. Big joke. Right? So they're taking credit for these fire tenders. But permit me, as I said, I'll look at the time. Right? Just so many things to talk about. I can't talk about everything. Let me just get this here. This is an article dated the 12th of April 2023, 3 years ago. Heinz, new fire equipment in 3 weeks. National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines says new equipment is expected to arrive for the TNT fire service within the next 3 weeks. In a media release, Hines said he has noted comments made regarding equipment availability. There are currently 5 stations without water tenders: Chaguaramas, Woodbrook, Belmont, Morva, and Santa Cruz. Last May, Cabinet approved $30.1 million to acquire a fleet of vehicles for the TTFS, which are yet to arrive. Chief Officer Arnold Bristow said this procurement activity, and listen to this, right? This procurement activity includes water tenders, a mobile water supply, and a chemical industrial tender, among other equipment. These vehicles are expected to be assigned to fire stations in Point Fortin, Pinal, and Mayaro. See, same fire stations to which tenders were assigned last week when they had their ribbon cutting and so on. It has to be constructed to suit our geographical requirements. Let me repeat that for the benefit of people like Philip Alexander and the other hypocrites in the UNC, the fully dones, right, who want to take credit for everything that the PNM did, because the fact of the matter is that your great government that has been in office for almost 1 year has precious little to show in terms of achievements. And everything that is happening now that you are happy to announce and take ownership of is as a result of the work that was done by the PNM, and it is now coming into fruition. Now we told maybe the PNM need to take some licks too. Perhaps the last administration didn't do a very good job of letting the population know all these things went through and all these things happening. Now we are seeing it happening, and we are to be on the back foot as normal, pedaling, back foot, back pedaling, because hey, let me repeat that. Chief Fire Officer Arnold Bristow said this procurement activity includes water tenders, this is 2023, a mobile water supply, and a chemical industrial tender. The chemical industrial tender hasn't arrived as yet, I'm assuming, among other equipment. These vehicles are expected to be assigned to fire stations in Point Fortin, Pinal, and Mayaro. It has to be constructed to our geographical requirements. It has to be constructed to suit our geographical requirements. So it's not just, we need 6 fire trucks, we need 10 fire trucks, just go and buy 10 fire trucks. No. Right? It has to be suited to our geographical requirements, so we don't end up like what happened in Tobago with the ambulances. That can happen in 6 months between when Mrs. Prasad Bisesa negotiated and she got $94 million from the Chinese, of which she said that would be used to purchase fire trucks. Doesn't happen in 6 months. According to the ministry, the procurement process from order to delivery takes between 15 to 18 months. Not 6 months, not 11 months, between 15 to 18 months. So it would be nice if these guys like this clown, Alexander, and others who want to take credit for it, members of the Foley Dons, could tell us how in 6 months, or even in 10 months, you all were able to wave a magic wand and just put out, you went through the procurement process. So you had your consultations with the fire service. They told you what was needed. You all did your assessment of what are the geographical requirements, as the fire officer would have said there back then. And then you went through the tender process, through the office of the procurement regulator and all of that. And then you were able to order 6 fire tenders to suit Trinidad and Tobago's geographical requirements. And you were able to do all of that. And the trucks arrived in 10 months. You could fool the foolish, you could fool the fully dones, but not everybody belongs to the fully dones. It goes on to say water tenders and other vehicles are not items that can be purchased overnight. And in fact, some equipment was placed on order more than a year ago and we are awaiting delivery. More than a year ago, this is in 2023, he's saying this. And we know up until the point in time that the PNM demitted office, the equipment had not arrived. But in 2023, the head of the fire services is telling you, we have equipment that has been on order for the last year and it ain't reached yet. For a whole year. But the UNC came into office last year and oh, magic. They make things happen in 10 months. Right? So as soon as they came into office, the first thing Alexander said, yeah, we need fire truck. He was sworn in on the 3rd of May, and by the 4th or the 5th of May, the first meeting that he had, the first cabinet meeting, they said, yeah, we need first order of business, we need fire trucks, right? So order it one time. One time. Don't go through no procurement. Just go on Amazon or something, or Temu or Alibaba and order 6 fire trucks. And they will know the geographical requirements of Trinidad and Tobago. He goes on to say, he admitted that the TTFS struggles to carry out its duties due to the lack of equipment, and while the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service is under some constraint with the increasing spate of bushfires, residential and commercial fires, and other incidents that require our intervention, we acknowledge and support the ministry's efforts to get the equipment that we need. Which ministry are you talking about? The Ministry of National Security. This is in 2023. Who was in power? Not the UNC. All right? So I will read that again. We acknowledge and support the ministry's efforts to get the equipment that we need. So since 2023, 2022, the PNM put things in place so that these fire trucks that came and that were distributed last week had nothing to do with any efforts of the dishonest UNC government that you have now who wanted to claim. And what is even worse? It is so easy. It's like it doesn't register to them that it is so very easy for people to find out the truth. File a Freedom of Information request. Anybody could do that. Go, you file a Freedom of Information request in the Ministry of Homeland Security, asking for details as to when did the procurement process for the purchase of these tenders start, under which administration. You don't want to put it. You just say, ask for a date. How much did it cost? What was the tender process? And they are obligated under law to provide you with this information with all of the details. So why would you want to come and lie and try and mislead the population when you could be easily shown and proven to be a liar? But that's when you don't care, because you know the population know that you lie with impunity. And your supporters don't care because they're just desperate, and they too upholding the lies. And as the saying goes, the upholder is worse than the thief. But they have no problem in being upholders. In fact, it's in their DNA to be upholders. Right? So just thought I would put that out there. To the fully done's, right? And those of you who on the chat are not looking right now for you to distract me. Those fire tenders had nothing to do with anything that your government did in the last 10 months. They came in and met that so. And even if you further doubt, okay, these things have to be paid for, has to be a budget. Okay? So if it wasn't approved, when they came in May of 2025, they didn't come in the media review to ask for any money to purchase any fire trucks. You know what they asked for money for? For CPEP, to carry CPEP to the 30th of September 2025, and then they shut down CPEP about a month later. Are we still asking that $60 million that they asked for CPEP? Where did it go? Where did it go? Since you said, you came to the parliament and said it was to take CPEP to the end of September, and then you shut down the program before the end of September. But they didn't come and say, well, we cabinet decided we want to purchase 6 fire trucks, and this is how much it's going to cost. And so we are asking for a supplementation for that. So Parliament approved no money when they came into office to purchase any fire trucks at the media review between May and the 13th of October. And again, in the budget that was read on the 13th of October, this document here, and nothing in here about any fire truck. Didn't ask for no allocations for any fire truck. Okay? So just to reinforce that for the benefit of the fully done's, we know you're all desperate for something, anything that you could lay claim to that your government has done in the last 11 months. There's precious little to nothing. And I'm not sorry to disappoint you. And we will move to the next issue. Prime Minister came to the Parliament on Friday to make a statement. Talk about NGC, and NGC posting a profit of $3.some-odd billion. First profit of that size in 11 years. So in other words to say, well, the last time you had a profit of such margin was under the UNC. Again, we know what the UNC track record is when it comes to the NGC. 2010 to 2015, $16 billion was raided from the coffers of NGC. What they did with that money, we don't know. The NGC was the government's cash cow. to feed their financiers. Let us not forget the NGC was dabbling in business that they had nothing to do with. The Beetham wastewater treatment plant was placed under the responsibility of the NGC to be funded by the NGC, but that is not the NGC's mandate. But that is what NGC was doing. Money was coming from the NGC to fund the purchase of tickets for the South Cancer Fete. $1.1 million under them, 2010 to 2015. NGC was playing sponsor for all kind of things. Money was just sharing. And so we find ourselves in the situation again, where thanks to the efforts of the People's National Movement, the restructuring of Atlantic LNG and all of these things, that today the cows have come home. The chickens have come home to roost. And when we were telling you all for the last year, the PNM, and before that, this is what the PNM is doing, this is what the PNM is doing, Dr. Rowley, and others were telling you all, whole strain. Yes, they said tighten your belt, but I said give you a little time. Putting these things in place now, and we will see the rewards of it, the fruits of it in a year or two. Come 2027, bear with us, bear with us. We want to give all you more than 4% public servants, but we just can't give it to you all right now. Bear with us, give us until 2027 when the money will start rolling in, because we expect, if everything goes well, we will have money coming from Dragon, we will have money coming from Manatee, from Coquina Mannequin, and all of the other gas fields that we are negotiating, and who knows what else could come from that 200 trillion cubic feet Mariscal Sucre area. Bear with us, right? Just hold a little strain. But no, they take China. We'll give all 10%, 10%. All right, you get 10%. But you know, we're going to take back a piece of that. So we increase in NIS one time because hey, you're getting a pay increase and you have the money now, so we have to take back some for NIS. And we're going to increase the retirement age for NIS from 60 to 65. If you want a full pension of $3,000, you wait till 65. Otherwise, take it at 60, but you will get less for life, right? Then we come and tell you, well, here what? Yeah, we give you a pay raise, but you see the back pay? We have money for that. So we will give you a portion, a little some to tide you over for Christmas, right? A little smell, a little whiff. But the majority of it, we will pay you in non-cash options, like bonds and things now that you can't use until you reach retirement, depending on your age right now. Okay? And that might take about 2 to 4 years. It might pay you over a course of years, not one time. So, let me get this here. So the Prime Minister was happy to come to Parliament and boast about NGC. And it's because of the work of the NGC and blah, blah, blah. And of course, Penny had to put question to her to ask her, well, tell us, this profits, is any of that attributable to the work that was done by the People's National Movement with respect to the restructuring of Atlantic LNG? And as was to be expected, the Prime Minister said, nah, nothing to do with that. No, nothing to do with that. Yes, no, let me get this here. But Stuart wasn't in the Parliament at the time, so to respond, but of course, that didn't stop him from using the medium of social media. So to do. Where is it? Let's delete this. Right. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Just now, give me 1 second, folks. Let me see if I find this here. So, I think this is it. Yeah. This was Stuart's response to the Prime Minister. Once again, Kamala Persad-Bissessar stands up in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago and attempts to take credit for the work done by the former PNM administration. The profit made by NGC for the year ended December 31st, 2025, that Kamala announced is due to the restructuring of Atlantic LNG that was achieved by the PNM in December of 2023. The additional revenue made by NGC in 2025 is due to the higher gas prices we achieved via a new basket of indices using European and Asian gas prices as well as Brent pricing, as well as the 10% shareholding in trains 2 and 3, which we never had before, which resulted in more LNG cargoes to NGC. Recall, prior to this restructuring, Trinidad and Tobago only had shareholding in train 1, which train was decommissioned because of the shortage of gas, right? And when the previous administration said, well, look, we may not have the gas now, so we have spare capacity, and therefore the major players in the other 3 trains where we have little to no shareholding, they already, since we have a 10% in train 1, so it makes more sense for them to preserve the other 3, but this one. So government said, yeah, well, we are willing to spend the money, notwithstanding what the other shareholders are saying, we are willing to spend the money to mothball train 1. And if in the near future, gas presents itself where we need that extra capacity, we will have, it's simply a matter of restarting that train. And we recall the hullabaloo of the US, oh, they spent 200 million, and BP tell them, and Shell tell them, and the Chinese tell them they want nothing to do with that, and they decide to spend taxpayers' money and waste taxpayers' money to mothball the train, to mothball the plant. And when that money could have been better spent to buy laptop and pave road and pay public servants and all of that, they complained about. Right? Took the government then to task. It was a bad investment. But this week gone, Reuters is reporting now that there is some discussion taking place about reviving Train 1, given the prospects that now present itself in Venezuela, where Shell might very well have access to more gas than previously thought. Beyond Dragon, beyond Coquina Mannequin and Manatee, that Loran, which was not part of the equation before, because of the sanctions that won Venezuela, which sanctions have now been lifted. Because of that, Loran has now come into play. And Loran has more gas than Manatee. And since the infrastructure is already in place or would be in place, well, it's already in place because I think they already started with Manatee, or soon to be, right? And Loran and Manatee is in the same area, same field, basically. So now, that's additional gas that was not part of the equation before. And Shell, seeing the potential of the Mariscal Sucre area, others 200 trillion cubic feet of gas, and they are best placed and best poised to monetize that gas now, as opposed to anybody else who may have interests. And they are certainly going after that. They may find themselves in a situation where they may have access to gas that might be too much for the spare capacity that they have now. But understand, they are in the driver's seat, as I told you last week, and they are the ones who will call the shots. They can say, well, hey, well, we are willing to honor any agreements that we would have had for this field, that field, that field, and that. You see these others here? But we are now negotiating with Venezuela and nothing to do with Trinidad and Tobago. That is not up for discussion. They can say that. And we have no leverage. We can say nothing because the position when we were just over a year ago, a year and a half ago, when we were in the position, when we were in the driver's seat, and we, Trinidad and Tobago, was in a favorable position, not Shell, the government was in a position to negotiate with Venezuela for more than Loran and for other fields that some of us have never heard about within that Mariscal Sucre area. Now the tables have turned, and Shell are the ones who can negotiate for that. And I read for you all last week, with Kevin Ramnam, we have spoken about that the taxes and royalties attributable to that gas be paid to government of Venezuela, not Trinidad and Tobago. So the profit sharing and the production sharing agreement that would have existed when the PNM was in power with respect to the 20-year license and the 30-year license, that is now, well, Venezuela say that is null, void, and of no effect, but it seems our delusional government here still seems to think that it is still in effect. The Prime Minister made an announcement while she was commissioning these fire tenders about a diplomatic mission going to Venezuela. But we'll touch on that just now. Let me finish off what Stuart said. The additional revenue made by NGC in 2025 is due to higher prices, higher gas prices, which we achieved via a new basket of indices using European and Asian gas prices, as well as Brent pricing, as well as the 10% shareholding in trains 2 and 3, which we never had before, which resulted in more LNG cargoes to NGC. These are the reason for NGC's profits in 2025. To pretend that NGC's profitability is due to anything that the UNC did is not only misleading, but it is delusional, and I would add, dishonest. The losses made by NGC in the past were due to the only energy contract that the UNC negotiated between 2010 and 2015, which was loss-making and continues to make losses. That is CGCL. It has cost NGC billions in losses. These are the facts. It is not surprising that the UNC would attempt to claim responsibility for NGC's good fortune of increased profitability. However, nothing is further from the truth. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, Monilal, Ramdeen, and Ramprasad Mutilal are incompetent and have done nothing positive in the energy sector since taking office. In fact, their policies have been destroying the gas sector and in particular the petroleum chemical sector. We challenge the NGC to state how much of its profits are attributable to the higher prices and additional LNG cargoes that are attributable to the restructuring of Atlantic LNG, none of which the Prime Minister spoke to. Because had she done so, it would have made a lie of her claim that all of these profits are attributable to what her government has done between May and December. It is instructive to note that the board of the NGC, led by Gerald Ramdeen, was only appointed in July of 2025. Remember the fiasco where Glenn Ramadas Singh's brother was appointed chairman, and then it had some tantana, and then we hear that he was no longer chairman and Gerald Ramdeen was chairman, and then they were looking for confirmation as to whether Mr. Ramdeen was in fact the chairman, and we heard he wasn't, and then we heard that he is in fact the chairman. And so it would have taken some time for them to constitute the entire board, for them to receive their instruments of appointments and to first meet, which would have taken us into August, September, October, November, December. What did they do in that 5 months? We know, one of the things we know is that their actions would have resulted in Nutrien signaling that they were shutting down their plant and that preparations were being made for them to perhaps leave Trinidad and Tobago. To date, we know that that situation still has not been resolved, and that as far as we know, the Nutrien plant is still shut down, and that would have impacted as well. NGC, we would have read, shut off, turn off the gas to the Nutrien plant, citing that Nutrien owed them some $28 million for port fees, and you all remember that whole bacchanal. Okay? So those are the things that the most standout things that took place over the course of the last 5 months. Well, between the time that the Ramdeen board was appointed in July to December, which is when the financial year would have ended. We also know that some of the things that they did was they decided to pull sponsorship, long-standing sponsorship for certain steel bands, particularly based in the South. They did that. These are the things that nothing positive. What does Ramdeen know about? Well, probably he knows now, but at the time of his appointment, what did he know about natural gas? What was his expertise? What is his background in that field? That is what they did. But they could point to nothing else that they did. Just say, well, hey, look. Since the Prime Minister made that statement and Stuart would have responded, anybody from NGC come out and make a statement and say, well, no, this is what we did, X, Y, and Z? Did Ramdeen put out a statement? Did Munilal, who loves to respond to Stuart, did he put out any statement to contradict or refute what Stuart said? No, hasn't, because they cannot. So again, coming to take responsibility, desperate, after a year in office with nothing to show, nothing of substance to show. Coming to piggyback now and fully dance to convince them that you all were responsible for these things. But again, PNM had to take some licks. Because while, yes, these things were spoken of when it took place, 2023, 2024, and so on, I don't think that we did enough to emphasize what was being done and the impact that it would have had. And perhaps it's because the party assumed that the population, knowing that the UNC is nothing more than a bunch of conmen, those who lead the party, probably believe that the population will recall what 2010 to 2015 brought, what 1995 to 2001 brought, and would say, listen, granted we upset with the PNM, perhaps governance over the last 5 years is not what we had hoped for. They have disappointed us in certain ways, but when we juxtapose against what the alternative offers, notwithstanding what they are saying, maybe we should give the PNM another chance. No. Probably thought that would happen. That didn't happen. The population decided to take a gamble, and in less than a year, regret all around. Not even except for the members of the cult, who refused to accept, who, because of their suffering from cognitive dissonance, refused to accept the fact that their party has been a government, their party and the government has been an abysmal failure. Nothing of substance to show, with 1/5 of their tenure almost to an end. But we still have 4 years of this to go. But we know what is likely to happen. When money starts to run next year, we know the template from 2010 to 2015 was going to happen. Prasad Bisasa boasted 2010 to 2015, her administration had the highest energy revenues in this country's history. And it looks like we are headed for a repeat. Again, thanks to the efforts of the People's National Movement, that she may once again be in charge when the highest energy revenues in the country's history will once again be repeated. And the supporters love to talk about, you had 2 oil boom under the PNM and what they do, and the money passed through like a dose of salt, and what they do with the money. Well, we had oil boom 2010 to 2015, but they don't ever talk about that one. And I will always remind them that it was Prasad Bisasa who said that. When Dr. Rowley in 2019 had his Mind Your Business segments, the 2 nights, after the first night, the next day, Prasad Bisasa had a press conference where she was surrounded by, I think, Gopi Singh and Fuad Khan and a couple others. And in that press conference, she said, yes, my administration had the highest energy revenue in the country's history. She said that. But yet still, you took the exchequer account from 10 billion in overdraft to 33 billion in overdraft in 5 years. Raided NGC bank account takes $16 billion. We still are asking, where did that money go? But yet still, you take loan to build the Kuva Children's Hospital. You took a loan again from the Chinese to build the aquatic center, to build the velodrome, the cycling center, to build the racket center. Only loan here, loan there, loan everywhere. All of which came due under the PNM. So the loans were taken under the UNC, the People's Partnership, but payments were only started sometime around 2017, 2018, based on the terms of the loan, when the PNM was in office, and money that the PNM should have had at their disposal to be able to provide goods and services to the citizens had to go now to servicing debt that was incurred by the People's Partnership. But we don't talk about that enough. And certainly the supporters don't want to hear that. But as I said before, we, the PNM, should have done a better job of enlightening the population as to what they did. But then again, even so, with whatever efforts we did have in place, the UNC did a masterful job of always bringing to the fore or causing to be highlighted negative stuff that drowned out whatever the PNM was talking about, the good things. We should have used state media as they are using it now, right? The pad 91.1 with all their talking heads, all the activists and so on, paying them salaries from your taxpayers' money to come on the radio and talk rubbish, right? And to promote foolishness, propaganda, lies, misinformation. That's what they pay gang a salary to do on state media. Whether it be TTT, 91.1, Sweet 100, Next 99, or whatever it is, yeah, that's what they're doing. So the Prime Minister announced, and what a strange place to make that announcement, right? That while you are at the ribbon cutting ceremony, the distribution ceremony for fire trucks, you thought it fit to make mention of a diplomatic delegation that would be going to Venezuela soon, sometime soon. We don't know when, sometime soon, to seek our interests, right? And our fair share, according to her, our fair share of oil and gas interests. That is very telling. Because for the fully dons, they interpret that to mean, well, they're going to Venezuela to negotiate Dragon. We have no fair share in Dragon. All right, so let me just mention that for the benefit of the fully dons. Dragon belongs to Venezuela. What we do have a fair share in is Manatee. Thanks to the efforts of the PNM and Stuart and Keith Rowley, they were able to negotiate decoupling, delinking Loran and Manatee. All right. Now, I don't know if perhaps there is some kind of upheaval there with respect to Manatee. I don't know. That she wants to send this diplomatic delegation to Venezuela. I don't know who they're going to speak to, because just this week gone, the president of Venezuela, I ain't calling her acting anymore, the president of Venezuela, because our government finally acknowledged that she is the president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, went to Grenada. Not Trinidad and Tobago, which is much closer. She went to Grenada and met with the Prime Minister of Grenada, and they had fruitful discussions, which included matters of energy and so on. And when she was leaving, well, while she was heading wherever, she was interviewed by a member of the media who asked her a couple pointed questions. One was, why did she choose Grenada? And she said, because we have relations with them. And the reporter asked, so what about Trinidad? Right? Trinidad is closer. She was asked, do you plan to go anywhere else? She said, not at this time. Not at this time. Right? So clearly, we have relations with Grenada. So that's how we came to go. So what Trinidad? Clearly, Delcy doesn't think that Venezuela has relations with Trinidad. We know why. Okay? And she has no plans to go anywhere else at this time, which means we will not be seeing Delcy coming here anytime soon. She refused to engage Trinidad and Tobago at all with respect to that questioning by the member of the media. And just that little interaction there, less than a minute, was very telling. So who exactly this delegation going to speak to? Would have been nice if the Prime Minister could have shared those details. Now, from where I sit, the more appropriate place for her to have made that statement would have been in the Parliament. Since you saw it fit to come to the Parliament on Friday to tell us about NGC and the profits, and further that the NGC is going to be paying those profits in United States dollars. Good news for the 11,000 investors in that particular fund, right? Yes, so you all will be getting dividends. They agreed to pay, I think, $1 per share or something like that, and you will be getting your dividends in US. And that is supposed to be good news. Good news for who? But first of all, they'll have to talk about PNM was about making the rich richer. Who are these investors? Pretty sure it's not the average Joe on the street. Pretty sure it's not the former CPEP, URP, forestry workers. No. Pretty sure it's not them. So if we were to do a deep dive into who some of these investors are into that particular fund who will be receiving their dividends in US dollars, pretty sure it is not, the lower rungs of society. So I see Slimy Show is saying she's interim. I think Slimy Show, that is, well, it is apparent that by the endorsement, the fact that one, Ms. Rodriguez has been endorsed by Up North, and two, sanctions have been lifted on Delcy, such that that trip she made to Grenada, she would not have been able to do so before, because I suppose any vessel, any aircraft that she would have come on would have been considered to be a sanctioned aircraft, and therefore would not have been allowed to enter the airspace of Grenada, certainly any other country. So the fact that she was able to make that trip speaks volumes. Up North is going to be in office until January 20th, 2029. So I think it's safe to say that until such time, Delcy will be the president of Venezuela when she's still alive. All right. I think Mr. Trump has washed his hands of Maria Machado, notwithstanding the fact that she would have sought to curry favor, as we see in local parlance, by giving him her Nobel Peace Prize award, her medal. Yes, as grateful as he was for it. As he said, she just doesn't have the support. He doesn't think she's strong enough to be president of Venezuela. So we could use the term acting, we could use the term interim if we wish. But the fact of the matter is, so long as up north is in office, Nicolas Maduro will be living in New York, right? In a prison in New York. And Delcy is likely to serve out the rest of his term. So while we could use the words interim, acting, the fact of the matter is, acting suggests that the substantive will be coming back to take up that post. We know that for the next couple of years, that's not happening. It's not like Maduro went on a vacation or he in the hospital, he's sick. He's on a foreign trip. He's on a foreign trip, courtesy the United States of America. But his stay in the United States of America is indefinite. And so Delcy is the president of Venezuela. Just say, she calling the shots. And since up north is not inclined to facilitate any new elections in Venezuela, at least not for the rest of his term, Delcy's going to be there for a while. All right? And she ain't going to call no election. Pretty sure of that. And I think the term of office is 6 years. So the election was held in, I think, July of 2024, and Mr. Maduro would have assumed office sometime early 2025. So it's just about 1 year of his term went, I think, close to the anniversary of 1 year in office. So they'll see have another 5 years in office. Okay? So she will be there after we have our 2030 general election. Well, I say once she's alive, because, as the Lord says, none of us knows the date, the time, the hour. So just making that point. But now that the dynamics have changed, all right, it's a different kettle of fish. So I was making the point that the Prime Minister spoke about this delegation. I mean, if you're trying to pacify relations, strained relations with Venezuela, tone down your rhetoric now. Tone it down. But for some reason, this government just doesn't understand. Tone down, pat down, take your time. You come in to talk about we are sending a diplomatic delegation to Venezuela to secure our fair share. What does that suggest? That is not calm language. That is not diplomatic language. And you say it with a certain degree of attitude. Going to secure our fair share of oil and gas. What oil? When has oil ever been a discussion in the equation? So what fair share of oil are you talking about? Gas? Yes. Oil? How? The Manatee Field have oil in it? If so, we've never heard about that before. So where did that come from? So tell us. But the better place for you to have made that statement would have been in the Parliament. Not at a ceremony where you're commissioning fire trucks. I fail to see the nexus. Was that part of your speech? It didn't seem so. So just something that you said off the cuff. Why? Because the date on which this event took place, I believe, coincided with the expiration of the OFAC license, which was given to us on the 9th of October. 6 months takes us to the 9th of April. Today is the 12th. And it is interesting that the media has not spoken to that issue. In light of the Prime Minister making that statement, that was the opportune time for the media to ask her, well, okay, is this motivated by the expiration of the OFAC license? What is the status of that license? Have you all sought an extension? Are any discussions ongoing for an extension? Has it expired? What is happening? With respect to the KPIs that were stipulated with that OFAC license, have we achieved any at all? Have any overtures been made? to Venezuela with a view to achieving 1, 2, any of these KPIs to satisfy the requirements for an extension or a new OFAC license. There's a reason why the US made it 6 months and not 1 year. Help us out now. No talk. The media didn't ask her no questions about that. No questions to the Minister of Energy about that. No conference. They had cabinet meeting. No talk about that. Because they figure it's not on the radar of the public. Public ain't doing the maths to work out. Well, they say 6 months, so in April, it's 6 months. Nothing. What's going on? So just out of the blue. What motivated that? Because for 6 months and more, we've been asking, what's going on? Since you came back from Washington and you were in the airport and talk about who is prepared to go to Venezuela, and they ask, well, who's going to be part of this delegation? And she said, well, there's the Minister of this and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Energy and myself. Are you a part of that delegation, madam? Because at that time, you weren't yet declared persona non grata, but you are now. So who is going to comprise this delegation? Is it still under discussion, consideration? Or you just throw that out there as a herring to give your supporters a talking? But yeah, look what. And then a day or two after, they'll see basically pour cold water on that. We have no relations with China. You would think Trinidad and Tobago being our closest partner, that is where she would have gone first. Oh, she went all the way to Grenada, one of the countries that our Prime Minister, our government told us they would be having discussions with. Because we don't need Venezuela gas. No, we're going and talk to Grenada, and we're going and talk to Suriname, and we're going to talk to Guyana. We don't need Venezuela. In the first place, Venezuela gone is Grenada. So if it comes down to it, we feel Venezuela stands to benefit more from Trinidad and Tobago or Venezuela. We struggling for gas, Venezuela have it. We struggling for oil, Venezuela have it. And if all goes well over the course of the next couple of years, Venezuela, similar to Guyana, is going to see an explosion in the energy sector once more. Right? And so all cussing all the Venice, we and the Venice this and the Venice take care, we work on it. Well, soon enough. Once things ramp up, because Shell looking to do what they have to do, and others will be coming in soon enough, right? All who seeking to get a piece of the pie before the pie is all taken up. And Venezuela certainly has a big energy pie. Money will be flowing into Venezuela, and soon it might be Chinese looking to head to Venezuela, just as they head into to Guyana. Investment dollars from Trinidad and Tobago that should be spent here is going to Guyana as we speak. Some of our biggest conglomerates, biggest businesses setting up shop in Guyana because there is opportunity there, there is money there, and there is US dollars there. So while our government trying to court local businessmen for this national revitalization plan, which all of a sudden seems to have gone cold because we hear nothing about it, you know. Oh, they went all over the place to market this thing. And now, what happened with that? Last we heard every now and then the Prime Minister will come and fool all. Say, we got 965 expressions of interest for the various packages. But you had a second round. After you went to the UAE and China and Qatar and wherever else, you come back to Trinidad and had a second round with local businessmen. And while they clapping at praise, oh yes, this is such an innovative, this is ambitious, this is what we need. They're taking the money and running Guyana, opening hotel, opening mall, opening casino, and all kind of thing. Right? Opening branches of their businesses in Guyana at the expense of Trinidad and Tobago. Because nothing happening. The paving companies in Trinidad ain't getting work. All this government doing is patching, patch work, patch. 10 years under the PNM, they support us. We only want pave. We don't want no patch. We want pave, resurface, pave. Now their government is in office. We take in patch. It's better than nothing. Right? So, paving companies, they don't work here. So we might as well go with that. Because Guyana paving road like that. Building a road like that. So there's work for our people, so they're going across there. Right? So that's why we have to go abroad to now court businessmen from abroad to come here to develop our country, to build all these edifices that really and truly will serve little to no purpose. I set a white elephant all over the place that make Trinidad and Tobago look like Dubai or look like New York. So people live in New York to come to Trinidad to see New York. What makes us unique? What makes us attractive to these people who are accustomed to seeing all these skyscrapers and these tall buildings and so on? They're not running from that to come here to see the same thing. But okay. But I was making the point. With respect to the Prime Minister's announcement that these dividends will be paid in US dollars. And again, the members of the fully dunce camp applaud that. Yeah, right, we're going to get US dollars. All that is going to do is simply result in capital flight. So as these people receive the US dollars, what do you think they're going to do with it? They leave it here? No. We need those precious US dollars here. So it would have made more sense for NGC to hold on to those US dollars and to pay the dividends in TT dollars, right? And add those US dollars to the country's foreign reserves. Boost our country's foreign reserves, which can help our credit rating. But no, oh yes, look what the UNC going to do. We're going to pay these dividends in US dollars to the 11,000 plus shareholders of this company. First of all, they're not going to pay you in cash. So they'll give you a check, a US dollar check for whatever your dividends are. How do you negotiate that check? Well, it's either you have a US account to put it in, or you could put it in your TT account. But what the bank will do is purchase the check, the US at the what they call the mid rate, right? And give you whatever is the TT equivalent of that. And that's, I know from my time in the bank. So the bank will now purchase the US from you. So they are now the owners of the US and they will give you TT if you don't have a US account. You could open a US account, or you could try to open a US account. Because right now, to open a US account in Trinidad and Tobago, the bank is asking you for an arm, a leg, a kidney, a lung, 6 pints of blood, and your firstborn. In addition to all the other paperwork, right? And then after you open they're telling you, but even when you open the account and you have money, you need to show us, first of all, that you have a source of US income. Okay, you can't just come with 1,000 US or 2,000 US and say, I want to open an account. No, we need to see that this US is coming from a legitimate source, right? Before we open the account. Now, when we open the account, even though you have money in the account, you can't just come to the bank and say, I want to make a withdrawal of US dollars. They're telling you up front, your ability to withdraw is based on the availability of US on that particular day. So it matters not how much you have and how much you need to get. You could come and put in the request, but depending on how much you want, you will be placed on a waiting list. And that list could be a few days long, a few weeks long, a few months long. That's what they told me recently. Right? That's what they told me when I tried to open a US account. No, I have one in Bank of America. So then there's the wait time. Even when you put your US into the account, you have a check. Based on when I was in the bank, the wait time could be anywhere between 18 to 42 days for your check to be cleared. Right? So your money just sit down there. Because remember, the bank on which your check is drawn is a foreign bank, right? The corresponding bank is probably based in the US, in probably New York or someplace, say Philadelphia, or wherever it is, LA, California, somewhere, wherever is the corresponding bank for NGC. So the money just going to sit down there and you waiting for it to clear. Even if the bank purchases the US from you and they convert it to TT and put it in your TT account, it's going to be on hold for between 18 to 42 days. So what people simply do is say, well, if you're telling me if I have a US account with you and I bring my money and put it here, that when I'm ready for it, I can't get it. And I might have to wait weeks or months to get it. Then that don't make no sense. It's better I go outside and open an account in the US and put my money there. So when I need it, I could get it. I could get how much I want. And I have no wait. And since the check is drawn on a US bank, it's going to take less than the period of time it would take in Trinidad for that check to clear. So that's what people are going to do. They'll take the money and go abroad. Who could? And put it abroad. So the money leaving here, we need it here. But this government thinks it's a good idea to give it to the people in US dollars. Well, all right, no problem. Proceed. Let them take it elsewhere, take it abroad, put it in their bank account in the US, which is what a lot of our businesses who are in the business of export are doing. Because the bank's telling them the same thing, and when they need their US to pay their suppliers, it's better you put it in a US bank account, and when you need to pay your suppliers, you send an email or instructions to your banks up there to wire transfer money to this supplier, to their bank account, and so on, and your bills are paid one time, rather than you're putting your money here. And when you go to the commercial bank, they tell you, well, you know, yeah, we don't have a US now, so you have to wait. You have to wait 2 months or a month. Right. Poor thing. Anyway, let me see. And right. So the fully done have arrived. Let me just respond quickly, just to this one comment. This one who goes by the name of Zuku V Skyable. Right? Again, talking about you flew recently. Did you enjoy the online immigration form Kamala did for you? If you would go and do your research, you clown, you would see that since under the PNM, that started, right? Before the general election of last year, CARICOM Impacts had announced that they were going to be doing a soft launch, right? They would be testing it. And it is CARICOM Impacts in association with the government of Trinidad and Tobago, collaboration with the government of Trinidad and Tobago, who facilitated that. So again, it is something that started under the People's National Movement. Okay? But you all want to come and take, because you all lack the ability to do any level of research. You're also fully dunce. That, oh, Kamala do this and Kamala did nothing. All of these things started under the People's National Movement. And had the PNM not lost office in April of last year, these things would have been in train anyway. Anyway, but let me not be sidetracked by these clueless individuals. Talking about 10 years under the PNM. Plenty of things happened under you. You want to know if I enjoyed the online form? May I ask you, the 3 increases that Keith Rowley gave you, assuming that you have a job and assuming that you earn more than $7,500 per month and you pay taxes, the 3 increases that Keith Rowley gave you in your personal allowance, such that you're paying less in taxes, personal income tax now, than you were paying 2010 to 2015 under Kamala, when your personal allowance was $60,000 and Keith Rowley took it to $90,000, such that if it, depending on what your salary is, again, assuming you have a job, you no longer pay income tax, and the tens of thousands of citizens who no longer pay income tax. Did you enjoy that? Or did you tell your paymaster, here, what? Keep my personal allowance at $60,000. I don't want the reduction in income tax that Rowley gave me. Did you tell them that? When Keith Rowley reduced that from 15% to 12.5%. Did you go, every time you go somewhere where you have to pay tax, when you go to the grocery, do you tell the cashier, hey, what, charge me 15% tax. I don't want the 12.5%. I don't want the 2.5% reduction that Rowley gave me. When you went to buy, assuming you ever purchased a brand new car since VAT was reduced to 12.5%, did you tell the salesman or the saleswoman, hey, what, charge me 15% VAT for this vehicle? I don't want 12.5%. The 2.5% that Rowley gave me, I don't want it. Did you do that? You went to the hardware recently to purchase material for your home, cement, any type of building material where the VAT is 12.5% instead of 15%. Did you tell the owner of the hardware here, what, charge me 15% VAT instead of 12.5%? Thanks to Keith Rowley, you no longer pay VAT on laptops, on cell phones. The last cell phone you purchased, did you tell the store owner, charge me 15% VAT instead of 0%? So they want to come here with nonsense. But the PNM do nothing, and the PNM do nothing. Miss me with that nonsense, yes. Too early to be distracted. Right. So as I was making the point, if I was so rudely interrupted, as they say, never argue with a fool, because he'll pull you down to his level and beat you with experience. And it's only the only trolls UNC sending to come here are the fools. No common sense. But anyway, so we wait to see who is this delegation the Prime Minister is going to send to Venezuela and what will come out of that. But she needs to tone down the rhetoric a little bit, right? Because clearly Delcy is in no mood for her foolishness. If you want to play big tonto and you big and bad, Delcy will show you who is big and bad. And they are right now in the position, as I said before, to tell Shell here, what, we're willing to do business with all you, but solved for Trinidad and Tobago. And since Shell's first obligation is to their shareholders, which is not Trinidad and Tobago, sure they'll have no problem acquiescing to that. So in the interest of time, let me come to the goodly, this exchange, this debacle between CARICOM and the government of Trinidad and Tobago. boy. I tell you. So, in a nutshell, the bacchanal is the government of Trinidad and Tobago stated they do not support the re-election of Dr. Carla Barnett as the CARICOM Secretary General. And the reason, supposed reason for not supporting, is because of the procedure or the way in which Dr. Barnett was re-elected. At the last CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in February of this year, late February, which Mrs. Prasad Bisesa attended, the first meeting of the CARICOM Heads that she's attended since becoming Prime Minister. That issue, based on what we are reading, would have been discussed at the retreat, which the Prime Minister did not attend because she sought to exit the meeting shortly after she accomplished the mission that she went there to accomplish, which was to meet with Marco Rubio, to buff up the CARICOM leaders, to tell them that this zona piece, nothing but this zona piece is fakery in the bakery. And then, well, I think she met with the Afri-Exim Bank, representatives of the Afri-Exim Bank. She also, I think, would have met with the delegation from Saudi Arabia, with the United Arab Emirates, who came here a few weeks ago to tour Trinidad and Tobago as part of the government's attempt to convince them to come and invest money here in their national revitalization plan. So the crux of the matter is the issue of the reappointment or the re-election of Dr. Barnett took place at this retreat, which the Prime Minister did not attend, for reasons unknown to the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago, reasons perhaps only known to her good self and her cabinet. And that, to me, is the main issue of contention. If the Prime Minister had made herself available for the retreat, we would not be having this discussion. But what we are going through now and experiencing now really is an extension or continuation of the Prime Minister's seeming attack on CARICOM since becoming Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. The relentless attack as she seeks to posture for up north. Right? So look, you see them supporting Maduro, not me, Trinidad and Tobago, we just supporting no Maduro. So favor us. All right? So for what we are hearing, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa left St. Kitts on the night of the 25th, Wednesday the 25th. The meeting was supposed to run from the 24th to the 27th. All right, so she would have gotten there possibly on the Monday. The meeting started the Tuesday, the 24th. On Wednesday, she met with Mr. Rubio, where she received the invitation to come to Doral the following Saturday. And she would have delivered her speech, buff up CARICOM, and then boss out and tell Soba as well. You handle the rest, yes? See me have time for this. I didn't come here for that. Mission accomplished by Wednesday evening, so I could head out. Now, there's been a lot of correspondence back and forth. The Prime Minister is saying they wanted the CARICOM Secretariat to release documents with respect to the agenda and all of this different thing and whatnot and so on. CARICOM seeking to pacify, right? So the 15 members, which include Trinidad and Tobago. So the other 14 say, hear what? Let us treat with this thing once and for all because it's been going on for too long. So they call a Zoom meeting, I assume, a Zoom, last Friday, which we assume that the Prime Minister would have attended because if you are claiming, well, the manner in which this thing took place was untoward, she used the word corrupt, that the process was corrupted and so on. And since the other 14 members agreed with the process and supported the re-election of Dr. Barnett, if Mrs. Prasad Bisesa is saying that the process which they supported was corrupted. In other words, you're saying that they corrupt too. And there was some conspiracy to exclude Trinidad and Tobago for whatever reason, I wonder. Right? But all of that could have been avoided if she had just stayed and gone to the retreat. Now, we've seen correspondence with respect to the agenda, and there's a lot of stuff, right? And her attack dog, Anil Roberts, is now attacking Dr. Terence Drew, the chairman of CARICOM. So he attacked Ralph Gonzalez, he attacked Mia Motley, now he has gone after Terence Drew. So he coming down the list, right? By the time that he met office, he would probably have attacked every CARICOM leader that there is. These people don't understand what diplomacy is. And while they feel that they're simply attacking the heads, the citizens of these countries are taking note. Because I came across a couple posts from persons in St. Kitts and Nevis who telling Roberts, back off. This is not Trinidad and Tobago, all right? This is not Ralph Gonzalez. Don't play with Dr. Drew. We're not having that. That's what they basically tell them. They revived, in fact, one social media outlet in St. Kitts revived this video of him from a couple of years ago when he was around the savannah, pistoratically drunk. That is what they highlighted, and they're saying, look at this. This is a minister in Trinidad and Tobago. This is who want to be calling our prime minister this and calling our prime minister that. This is what the people in St. Kitts, when you read the comments under that post, petitions are saying this. Who is this upstart? Who the hell is he to come and disrespect our prime minister? He fast and out of place, calling him a drunkard and all kind of thing. But we're supposed to be proud of that. This is a minister of government in Trinidad and Tobago. And he continues to double down because this morning he came back out again calling Mr. Drew a liar and he needs to resign and who had to resign, Barnett and whoever else, and this one had to resign and that one had to resign. You know about resignation. This man who should be behind bars. This man who has a big question mark over his head and allegations of having been, well, allegations of having a hand in a conspiracy to kill a certain radio DJ. This man who has allegations over his head with respect to wrongdoing in the live sport program wants to come and talk about who should resign. Man, look. Rest me with that. If hypocrisy was a person. So CARICOM put out a statement a few hours ago. Statement from the chairman of CARICOM. And it reads, the heads of government of the Caribbean community met on the 10th of April 2026 to discuss the issues in relation to governance of the community that have been raised by Trinidad and Tobago, especially including the reappointment of the Secretary General of the community. Neither the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago nor any representative from Trinidad and Tobago attended the meeting. That's very instructive. This meeting was called because of complaints raised by Trinidad and Tobago. CARICOM, the leadership of CARICOM, other heads of government say, well, we need to carve out a portion of time from our schedules as prime ministers to be able to come to this meeting, this Zoom meeting, so we can discuss this issue because clearly it has gotten out of hand and Trinidad, you recognize they are the largest financial contributors to CARICOM. So saying, all right, no problem, let us meet. But our prime minister didn't see it fit to attend the meeting that was called based on her complaints and the complaints of her minister of CARICOM, Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. If that isn't a disrespect to the other CARICOM leaders, I don't know what is. Right? Well, meeting caller, well, okay, who is the main complainant? She ain't coming on. Anybody from, you got any communication? Anybody from Trinidad coming on? Show sobers coming? Anybody? Nah, bhai. Trinidad and Tobago is a no-show. Meanwhile, the president of Guyana was in Trinidad and Tobago on Friday. He came to the parliament and he met with the prime minister. So I'm assuming that he, notwithstanding the fact that he was in Trinidad, probably made the time to be able to be a part of the meeting. But the prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who was away from the parliament chamber for quite some time during the course of the day, couldn't go to her office, which she was most likely in, turn on her laptop or turn on her computer, her desktop. Because when you walk through the door, her desk is right on the side there and so on. Nice fancy office. Time to time when you're passing, they would Maybe somebody going in or the door just a little bit open and you could take a little peep. Right? So what was she doing? Because she wasn't in the chamber. She came to the chamber for a little bit and then she left and then she came back when we had to take the vote with respect to the bill that was before us. And I think as either or part of that call for the division, which was unnecessary because we told them we supporting the bill. But you want to call for a division, so you want to hear each of us say, yes, we told you. All of our speakers said we supporting it. When it was called for all in favor, say aye. Any against? Nobody from our side said anything. So we agreed. Division. But anyway. It continues. In keeping with the discussions among the heads yesterday, information related to communications with member states in preparation for and during the 50th regular meeting of the conference, as well as discussions and decisions taken by heads while meeting in retreat is shared in the attachments. It is hoped that as the community moves forward, it will be possible to revert to the use of internal mechanisms for addressing the challenges that arise from time to time, lest unfortunate and erroneous statements diminish the progress towards deepening the integration process for the benefit of the people of the region. So in other words, CARICOM is saying we have been forced to come down in the Gael, come down in the gutter, and to treat with this in the public space, in the public domain, across the region, when this should have been dealt with in camera, behind closed doors, among the 15 heads of government. Right? But because the government of Trinidad and Tobago, we gave them the opportunity, you all wanted the meeting, all right? We facilitated the meeting. All the heads say, we will come to the meeting, let us discuss this as big men and women. Or as we say in local parlance, big man and woman. Now you sit down and talk. Don't want to be in person, you've seen everybody on the screen. And the people who called for the meeting didn't even have the courtesy to show up. If Keith Rowley had done that, if Amory Brown had done that, you wouldn't hear the end of it from Ralph Maraj. From all of the men and women of letters who love to write to the editor, who love to send letters to the newspapers and who have commentary, right? But these same men and women who for the last 10 years under the PNM had plenty to say, all of a sudden they've gone silent. All of a sudden they're endorsing this foolishness. Where is Ralph Maraj? Is he ambassador to CARICOM? Where is he? Quiet. Nothing to say. Right? Every now and then he pop out his head from wherever hole he's in to write some dotish article to talk about Dr. Rowley and Petrotrin sin and some stupidness like that. And then run back in his hole like the coward that he is. Right? All the thing is, Keith Rowley, Trinidad and Tobago lost their position and we were ding and we lost the respect of CARICOM. CARICOM have respect for us now. In preparation for the 50th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM, which was held in St. Kitts and Nevis from 24 to 27 February 2026, all member states were duly informed of the official events, the draft agenda of the conference, and the program of work indicating which agenda items were to be taken in plenary sessions, in caucus, and in retreat of heads only. The officers of all heads of government were informed of the date and venue of the retreat via official correspondence prior to the meeting of the conference and via communication during the meetings. All member states acknowledge receipt of all official correspondence related to the convening of the 50th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago departed St. Kitts and Nevis on the evening of the first day of the conference, February 25th. Let me repeat that. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago departed St. Kitts and Nevis on the evening of the first day of the conference, February 25th, before the retreat on February 26th. On 25th February at 10:33 p.m., Foreign Minister Sean Sobers called the Secretary General on WhatsApp to inquire if he should attend the retreat in the absence of his Prime Minister. He was advised he could, and that other heads who have had to leave may be represented by their foreign ministers. He indicated that he had a problem with seasickness, so he may not be able to attend. And my question with respect to that is this. Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar did she know? Well, she knew. When she went to St. Kitts, she knew how long she was going to stay there. She would have gotten the agenda long before, because when you look at the agenda that is attached to this document, you see it's laid out. Since the middle of February, early February, they were getting these documents. So they knew, okay, this is what's going to happen on this day, this. So that when flights were booked for Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar to go to St. Kitts, the return flight would have been booked for the 25th of February. So she knew that she was not going to attend the retreat. If we're not sure about that and we say, well, okay, a last minute decision was made on the 25th. Then what is important to look at is the appointment letter that was given to Jolene John, which would state the period of time during which she would be acting as Prime Minister. Now, if it says from the 23rd to the 25th of February, then we know that at the time, before Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar left the jurisdiction, she was well aware that she was not going to stay for the retreat. All right? And since you knew that beforehand, common sense would dictate you would make inquiries. I am leaving on the 25th, so I will not be sticking around for the retreat. Let me get this again, right? So on the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago departed St. Kitts and Nevis on the evening of the first day of the conference. The first day, a 3-day conference, she left on the first day, before the retreat on February 26th, right? So if you know you weren't staying for the People's Retreat, but when you looked at the agenda, there were certain items that were slated for the retreat. It would have been incumbent on you as the Prime Minister to inquire if you weren't certain as to what these agenda items entail, because you just had general headings. But if you wanted more specific details, because one of the agenda items for the retreat was finance and governance of the secretariat, of the community. Under governance, election of or reappointment of the Secretary General would fall under that, because that is governance of the community. The person who is responsible for the day-to-day operations and governance of the CARICOM Secretariat is the Secretary General. So if you were not certain and you wanted to make sure that there was nothing important that was going to be discussed at this retreat, then you simply had to send a request to the Secretariat. Could you provide me with more granular details as to what these particular agenda items slated for the retreat entail? So I will know if my absence is all right or if I need to stay back for this because there are certain important things that needs to be discussed. But they probably just saw retreat and figure out nothing important there. They just probably go in and relax and we'll talk and drink some rum or something like that, drink some alcohol and laugh and then wasting my time. I don't have time to waste. All right? If you were not certain, ask a question. But the fact that this here says, Sobers called the Secretary General on WhatsApp to inquire if he should attend. Not if he could attend, if he should attend. There is a fundamental difference between could and should. If you call to find out if you could, it implies you want to come, but you're not sure if you are allowed to come because you are not a head of government. You are a minister, right? So you're in the grand scheme of things, you're a low-level functionary vis-a-vis the Prime Minister. So you're not certain if this is just for Prime Ministers and Presidents alone or if you are allowed to represent your Prime Minister who has since departed. So if you wanted to go and you weren't sure if you were allowed, because you don't want to show up by the boatyard where they were going to take the ferry and only to be told, well, this is for heads only, you're not allowed to come. And you're feeling embarrassed because you come there now and wait, well, you have to go back to the hotel, you can't attend this. To avoid that embarrassment, you ask, could I come? Should I come? Says, well, I know that I can come. I know that I'm allowed to come. I know that I'm permitted to come, but I really don't want to come. So asking you if you think I should come. Is there anything important that is going to be discussed that you feel Trinidad and Tobago needs to have representation there to discuss this particular item? So I'm asking you because I don't want to just not show up and then later you all discuss something important and then I wasn't there because I thought it wasn't important and I end up getting some licks. So I'm asking you, the Secretary General or the Secretariat, should I come? Do you, in your wisdom, think that there is anything important that is going to be discussed that I should be there. Otherwise, well, now it is alleged, we've heard, that the minister's wife and daughter were along on the trip. Why? I don't know. Because this was an official trip. If that is in fact so, if that allegation is true, then it suggests that since the minister was carded to come back to Trinidad on the Friday, and his wife and daughter were there, and he was caught up in these official engagements, he would not have had time to enjoy the mini stay vacation or whatever. It is alleged. I don't know if in fact they were there. But the word should and could, fundamentally different. Right? One suggests that I want to come, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to. The other one says, I know I could come, but I just want you to tell me, to confirm for me. So if I don't show up and something important is discussed and I missed it, that I could see, well, I asked you if I should have come and you said I didn't have to, right? Because I didn't know what the intricacies of the agenda was. That is why I reached out to you to find out if it was necessary for me to come, if I should, if you think I should. And because you said, well, no, you don't have to, I didn't come. So don't blame me. You got to take that blame because you told me I didn't have to. You don't think I should? That is what I am getting from this. But I could be wrong. It goes on. At 10:55 p.m. on 25th February, Chairman received the following WhatsApp messages from the Secretary General. Chairman, Trinidad and Tobago's Foreign Minister Sobers called me to ask if he should come to the retreat in the absence of his Prime Minister. I indicated that other heads who have left may be represented by their foreign ministers. He also indicated he gets seasick, so he's not looking forward to the boat ride. So we may not have TNT represented tomorrow. Now, this is a WhatsApp message she received, so it's not a call. So I don't think she would have deleted those important messages, so it could be provided. So while Mr. Sobers is telling us, well, he said this seasick issue, he just said that in jest. I was just making a joke. Clearly, the fact that the Secretary General mentioned that in her WhatsApp to the chairman, Prime Minister Drew, says that she didn't take it in jest. She didn't detect that he was just making a joke. All right? When, based on how it came across to her, she was of the impression that he was serious when he said that. So there's a question mark there. He said it was a joke. He just said it jokingly. Clearly that it wasn't received that way, right? For it to be mentioned in the WhatsApp message. At 12:37 a.m. on 26 February, Secretary General sent the following message to Minister Sobers. Minister, if the boat trip will cause nausea, I'm sure the chairman would understand if you choose not to come tomorrow. The minister did not subsequently indicate to the chairman or the Secretary General that he would be willing and able to attend the retreat. So even if there was a misconception that he said it in jest, as he said, and the Secretary General misinterpreted the tone, and she thought that he was being serious. The fact that she sent a WhatsApp message to him saying, Minister, the only thing she identified, right, that could have prevented him. Minister, if the boat trip will cause nausea, I am sure the chairman would understand if you choose not to come tomorrow. Right? So at that point, he should have known, well, hey, she didn't realize I was making a joke. She taking this thing seriously, so let me correct the record for her and say, no, I was just joking, you know, I didn't mean that. That didn't happen. So when he read this message, whenever he got it, because 12:37 a.m., if we want to assume that he was asleep at that time, but he sent a message just 2 hours earlier, so maybe he was on his way to go to bed. I don't know. He ain't seen kids maybe for a short time, so you want to, you know, I just say, when you read that message, and I would imagine that the minister would have read the message because he would have been getting other WhatsApp messages supposedly from, because he's the minister. And so probably back in Trinidad, your staff keeping you up to date with certain things, reaching out to you, certain things as a minister. I mean, I'm just an ordinary MP and my staff in the office always sending me WhatsApp messages for all kind of thing during the course of the day. Somebody came to the office, they got correspondence from so and so, they want to know what to do, stuff like that. And I'm not a minister. He's a minister, right? So at some point, and if you see a message come from the Secretary General of CARICOM, obviously it must be important. So I'm saying that whenever he woke up, assuming that whenever he read that, and so, Minister, if the boat trip will cause nausea, I'm sure the chairman would understand if you choose not to come tomorrow. It was a clear indication to him, hey, if you really said it in joke, she took it as something serious, as you were being serious. You should have corrected the record at that time. I said, no, I was just making joke, I'm available to come. But this is saying here, the minister did not subsequently indicate to the chairman or the Secretary General that he would be willing and able to attend the retreat. During the retreat, under the agenda item, financing and governance of the community, heads decided to consider the reappointment of the Secretary General and agreed to the appointment as provided for under Article 24 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. Now, when I was going through this and I saw that agenda item, automatically it came to me, well, okay, under governance and financing, if I see that. Now, if I attend a lot of meetings, when the agenda is sent to me, I see certain things. Okay, if I see an ambiguous heading that says whoever, so let's use this example, governance and finance. If I'm expected to make a contribution as a member, so I sit on the board, for example, of the Caribbean Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. We are having our AGM in Panama on the 2nd and the 3rd of May, right? So when the agenda comes, I look at it because as the president of my territorial association, I'm expected to speak, I'm expected to participate. I know how the process goes because I've attended several of these AGMs. So I would want to know, well, what exactly is this about? Because I don't want to be caught unawares. I don't want them to ask me a question and then I can't answer. So I want to make sure that I'm sufficiently prepped to be able to make a contribution to this agenda item when it comes up. That is what I do. Even now with other meetings that I attend with other boards, for instance, when I sit on the board of the St. Mary's College Past Students Union and the agenda comes out from the secretary, go through, okay, right, so we're going to be discussing this. Is there anything that I need to know in advance to be able to make a contribution? So I would assume in the same way that when this agenda came and you saw finance and governance of the community or whatever, given the fact that as Prime Minister, you are well aware that Trinidad and Tobago is according to you, the largest single contributor donor to the finances of CARICOM. That's something you want to speak on. That's something you want to discuss because the last time you were Prime Minister, you made it abundantly clear Trinidad and Tobago is not an ATM. So I would think you would want to use this opportunity to reinforce to them again, Trinidad and Tobago is not an ATM. I don't think that position has changed. We're still not an ATM as far as she's concerned. But now you are telling us that we contribute some $20-something million to CARICOM, I guess, every year. So you would want to address that issue. So that's a big thing. Even if you're not sure, send correspondence to the Secretariat and say, okay, can you tell me exactly what would be discussed under this? Because if finance is coming up, I don't want to be caught like a deer in headlights, a stump on a log, that when this agenda item comes up and my country, which I now lead, makes a significant contribution to CARICOM and I have nothing to say, I'm not prepared to treat with that. So I need to let whoever know, the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs or whoever else, you need to prepare a brief for me with respect to finance so that I could speak to this issue when this agenda item comes up. That's what you should do as a Prime Minister. But again, it is clear she had no intentions of doing that. Sobers clearly had no brief, had no intentions of speaking to that issue if he had gone, because the fact that he could call the Secretary General and ask her or send her a message to say, should I come? If you had something prepared to deliver at this retreat, at this event, then you wouldn't need to ask, should I come? I know I have to because I have something to say. I have something that was prepared. I have a message that the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago would like me to deliver on behalf of herself and the government that she leads. So there's no need for me to ask you if I should come. I know I have a document prepared that I have been given instructions by my Prime Minister that I am supposed to deliver this message to you. And if it is that I am unable to attend because you all want heads alone, then you all need to let me know what is the alternative avenue or alternative platform that I could use to ensure that this message from the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago as it pertains to governance and finance, which she, as a head of a government, would have been entitled to come and speak to, had she stayed back and attended and not left on the night of the first day of the meeting, she could have spoken to that. So it tells me you don't just walk into a high-level meeting like that with nothing. No talking points, anything. So she left. We are supposed to believe that he was supposed to represent her, but clearly he had nothing. No document, no talking points, nothing. So he would have just gone to the meeting and said, so, and just listening. Okay. Right. Oh, okay. Well, I can't contribute because I don't have anything. Nothing prepared. But they want to have, we were disinvited. They disinvited us. What contribution were you going to make, sir? Could you provide us with the notes of what you intended to speak about in this retreat? Because you had the agenda before, you saw what the agenda items was, and therefore, one assumes that as the largest financial contributor to CARICOM, if there was one agenda item that you would want to speak on at this retreat, has to do with finance and governance. Nothing. Hence the reason you would ask, well, should I come? If I don't come, it don't make a difference. Neither here nor there. I just want to know. It continues. A decision was also taken to delay the announcement so as to inform, as a matter of courtesy, the heads who were not at the retreat. Before the official announcement was made, attempts were made to reach the heads who were absent to inform of the decision, but it was not possible to make contact with the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago by email or telephone call. After some efforts to reach the Prime Minister, the chairman was asked to speak with the Foreign Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, as we understand it, I think there were two other countries that their leaders were not there. I believe it was the Bahamas, and I think it may have been Antigua, Barbuda. I stand to be corrected on that one. But this doesn't say that there was any difficulty in reaching those two leaders. The only leader that there was difficulty to reach was the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And I would imagine if there was difficulty in reaching the other two leaders, it would be stated here, right? But when we listened to the President of Guyana a couple of days ago, Irfan Ali, he said, 14 of us agreed. We support. The only country with a problem is Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm paraphrasing him there, but he basically said, well, 14 of us agreed. We support it. We have no issues with Dr. Barnett's reappointment. We think that she's done a fine job. The time that she's been there, the almost 5 years. What's the issue? We continue. While on retreat, under the agenda item on financing and governance, heads of government also agreed to establish a subcommittee of heads comprising Barbados, Dominica, Guyana, and Jamaica to review the governance and financing of community institutions. Under the agenda item Geopolitical Developments, heads also agreed to issue a statement on CARICOM's meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The timeline of correspondence overleaf sets out official communications with members on the preparation for the 50th meeting of the Conference of Head of Government of CARICOM, which was held in St. Kitts from 24th to the 27th of February 2026. All communications sent by the Office of the Secretary General to the offices of the heads of government, permanent secretaries in the Office of the Heads of Government, foreign ministers, and ambassadors to CARICOM unless otherwise specified. So even if they say the government of Trinidad and Tobago wants to say, well, the Office of the Prime Minister didn't receive anything. It was sent to the office, the secretary, it was sent to the heads of government, so the Office of the Prime Minister. It was sent to the permanent secretary, Office of the Prime Minister. It was sent to the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs in Trinidad, so it was sent to SOBA's ministry as well. and also to the ambassadors to CARICOM. So it would have been sent to Ralph Maraj as well. Right? So even if one party said they didn't get it, they sent it to several others. So if nobody in Trinidad and Tobago got it, then something wrong. We had to talk to the internet providers. We had to talk to the telephone service providers. Something wrong. 23rd of December, 2025. Here when, right? At 6:24 p.m., convening of the meeting. Save Ingram number 616-2025, sent via email informing of the dates of the opening ceremony and the business sessions from Wednesday, 25th February to Friday, 27th February. So there are 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Kamala Prasad Bisesa stayed for 1 day. She played Marco Rubio, right? I just drop in, say what I had to say, drop the mic, and I go on. No have time for all this sort of niceties and rubbing shoulders and all this kind of thing. It is also informed that the provisional agenda for the meeting and the memorandum of arrangements setting out the logistical and administrative information for the meeting would be forwarded under separate cover to ministries of foreign affairs of member states and to the associate members. December 31st, 2025 at 4:20 p.m. Save Ingram number 621-2025 sent via email with MOA attached. In addition to the usual officials addressees, email was also sent to sean.sobers@foreign.gov.tt. On page 3 of the MOA, under section 4, key dates, table had information for 26 February 9:30 a.m. Heads Retreat venue to be confirmed. Information included the following key events to take place prior to and during the conference. 24th of February, 9:30 a.m. special meeting of the Community Council, venue to be confirmed. 5 p.m. the opening ceremony, Marriott Dome, Frigate Bay. 7:30 p.m. welcome cocktail reception, the Beach House, St. Kitts Marriott Resort. 25th of February, 9:30 a.m. business session of the conference, Royal Ballroom, St. Kitts Marriott Resort. 26th of February, 9:30 a.m. Heads Retreat, venue to be confirmed. 27th, 5 p.m. press conference, St. Kitts Marriott Resort. 7 p.m. closing reception, venue to be confirmed. Letter of 7 January 2026, the Chair of Conference from the Secretary General. Attached were draft letters of invitation to be sent to CARICOM heads of government by the chair, including invitations for heads of government addressing the opening ceremony, the outgoing chair and the newly elected heads of government. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago was again invited to speak, as she had not attended the 49th regular meeting in Jamaica and therefore had not addressed that meeting as invited to do so by the then chair, because she sent Sobers and Alexander and Ralph Maraj to represent her at that meeting. Reason? Sobers said, well, the Prime Minister had more pressing matters to attend to in Trinidad, so she didn't attend. That's where Alexander got the idea for Zoso, after he had a discussion with the National Security Minister for Jamaica and come back to Trinidad with Zoso and try to drop Zoso on Wally. 19th of January at 3:14 p.m. Provisional agenda sent via email under Save Ingram number 25-2026. 19th of January, email from Cabinet Secretary St. Kitts and Nevis to the Chef de Cabinet. This email included a request to get the shirt sizes for the CARICOM heads and heads of delegation attending the meeting. Email stated that the shirt would be a button-up, Oxford type, or cotton blend. While that may just seem mundane, the Prime Minister has sought in her correspondence in the public space to make a big thing about the shirt. But the shirt issue is very important, and we will get to that just now. 20th of January at 9:26 a.m., email to secretaries in the Office of the President's Prime Ministers requesting measurements for the shirts. Deadline for receipt of information indicated to be 31st of January 2026. Right? So an email was sent on the 19th of January requesting shirt sizes, sent to the Cabinet Secretary, from the Cabinet Secretary, right, to the delegates. Again, on the 20th of January, they asked, another email was sent requesting shirt sizes, and these shirts were to be worn at the retreat. 27th January, 5:21 p.m. Email sent to secretaries in the office of the president's prime ministers with gentle reminder regarding the measurements for the shirts. 30th of January at 7:06 p.m. Provisional annotated agenda sent. 4th of February, 4:10 p.m. Email to secretaries in the offices of the president's prime ministers requesting exact measurements for the shirts as requested by St. Kitts and Nevis. The prime minister talking about, oh, they sent 8 emails about shirts, and apparently that was more important than sending information with respect to the reappointment of Dr. Barnett, which was and should have and was captured under the general agenda item heading, Finance and Governance. 9th of February, email to secretaries in the offices of the presidents and prime ministers, gentle reminder, reshoot measurements with indication. Very urgent. Now, we don't pass the deadline because the deadline was supposed to be 31st of January. 9th of February, 3:16 p.m. Response from Denise Drake's Prime Minister's Secretariat Office of the Prime Minister, Government of Trinidad and Tobago, forwarding on behalf of the Honorable Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, requested information as to measurements. Receipt acknowledged by OSG on the 9th of February at 3:26 p.m. Information sent to Cabinet Secretary St. Kitts and Nevis via email from the Chef de Cabinet on the 9th of February, 16. In a table, also with the measurements for the Prime Ministers of Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, and Jamaica, 4 in all. Okay? So 9 days after the deadline requested for the measurements of the shirt, the Prime Minister's office, Trinidad and Tobago, finally decided to respond with Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar's shirt size. What was the significance of that? Since these shirts were to be worn by the heads of government at the retreat, the assumption, obviously, of the Secretariat, having received the shirt size, is that Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar is going to be present at the retreat because the shirt is to be worn at the retreat. If she's not coming to the retreat, then now would be a good time to say, I will not be attending retreat and therefore I will not require a shirt. So we can assume one of two things. As at the 9th of February, Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar had not yet decided if she was going to attend the retreat, or at the 9th of February, she knew she was not going to attend the retreat, but decided to send her shirt size to fool the Secretariat into believing that she would be attending the retreat. Or if she hadn't yet decided, she wanted to leave it open. So in case I changed my mind last minute, to go, right? No problem. 19th of February, 11:44 a.m. Caucus papers sent by email to offices of the heads of government and foreign ministers. 19th of February, conference service copied on a note verbale sent on the composition of the delegation from Trinidad and Tobago to the meeting. 20th of February, message to heads of government via email agenda items for the 50th regular meeting, advising of the secretary that the Secretariat was working with the government of St. Kitts and Nevis on finalizing the program of work for the 50th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government. The email also advised that the number of anticipated engagements with special guests and partners, as well as plans for heads-only retreat, would reduce the amount of time available for plenary discussions. It had therefore been proposed that the Community Council, as the second highest organ in the community, be requested to consider several items on the agenda for the 50th meeting of the conference and to make recommendations for final approval by the conference in keeping with the Community Council mandate, as per the revised treaty, to function as a preparatory body for meetings of the conference. 21st of February, 1:25 p.m. program of events sent by email, including the following. 10 a.m. Thursday, 26th February. 20th meeting of CARICOM ambassadors, CARICOM delegations, communique committee meeting. 10 a.m. official photograph of CARICOM heads of government. Heads retreat, CARICOM heads only. All right, so this was sent on the 21st of February to the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago It would have also been sent to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So you are seeing heads retreat, 10 a.m., February 26th. CARICOM heads only. Now, if you knew at that time, you were contemplating, because this is the 21st of February, this is 3 days before the conference is supposed to start. I would imagine that by then, the government of Trinidad and Tobago would have already booked the flights for Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, and the other members of her delegation. So at least by that time, they would have known that she was not attending the retreat. Right? This is the 21st. The thing running from the 24th to the 27th. So if flights already booked, you booked your flight to go, and you know you're coming back on the 25th, the retreat is supposed to be on the 26th, so you know you would not be there for the retreat. You see CARICOM heads only. It didn't occur to you then to say, well, okay, it says CARICOM heads only. Secretary, could you email the Secretary, the CARICOM Secretary General, and inquire whether or not Minister Sobers would be able to represent me at this event, seeing as how I am seeing here, it says CARICOM heads only. So is that set in stone, or can an exception be made because I will not be attending the retreat? Can you find out if Minister Sobers is able to attend? Now, given that fact, you know the shirts are for the retreat. If Minister Sobers is representing you at the retreat, Minister Sobers is a big guy, right? There's a reason why they call him Chuff Chuff. But we know he goes to the gym, right? But he's a big guy. So ain't no way Kamala's shirt could fit Sobers. Even if it's a last minute thing. That shirt can't fit him, okay? At best, it could fit half his body because Kamala's small. So it means if Sobers is representing you at this event, he will not have a shirt. And even if they have extra shirts, again, Sobers is a big guy. So the likelihood that they would have a shirt with his measurements is slim to none because he's bigger than all the other men, all the other male heads there. And they're not anticipating that Sobers is going to represent you. So it is clear that after the 21st of February, 3 days before the event started, the CARICOM Secretariat had no idea that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa was not going to attend the retreat, and she didn't have the courtesy to tell them she's not attending. Perhaps if she had done so, they might have said to her, well, Madam Prime Minister, it is important for you to attend the retreat because we are going to be discussing this. One of the items is the reappointment of the Secretary General for the CARICOM Secretariat. And given what Article 24 says, ideally, we would like you to be there. But if you, for whatever reason, are unable to attend, we can make alternative arrangements to facilitate some sort of presence and representation by Trinidad and Tobago when we treat with that matter. So it made sense to let the people know that you're leaving and you would not be attending the retreat. And if you had given them the heads up, perhaps they could have put something else and say, well, all right, well, the prime ministers of this country, that country, these three countries will not be attending. So we need to work out something. Clearly, the other two countries, their prime ministers had no issues. They participated in some way or the other. But I continue. 22nd of February 2020 at 2:25 p.m. Information on the retreat. Email to secretaries in the offices of the presidents and the prime ministers, premiers, providing information on the arrangements for the retreat scheduled for Thursday, 26 February. Information circulated as provided by St. Kitts and Nevis on the attire, custom, locally designed dress shirts, venue, Nevis. Transportation, specially arranged water taxis. So the people would make arrangements that they say, all right, we assuming Prasad Bisesa coming to the retreat, so she will go on this water taxi here, right? And we need to make arrangements. We have information as to her delegation. We are allowing one person from her delegation, from each delegation, to accompany the prime minister. So this is the boat that Trinidad and Tobago will be on, right? Okay. Information circulated as provided by St. Kitts and Nevis on the entire right. Attendees Only heads of government plus their close protection detail and other security personnel as needed, and the CARICOM Secretary General. Time of departure. So, on the 22nd of February, information on the retreat was emailed to the Prime Minister's office, letting her know that for the retreat, this is who could attend. Only heads of government plus their close protection detail and other security personnel as needed. So one would assume that the Prime Minister, seeing that, would understand, well, look, I need to let them know how many persons I have in my security detail. Right? Because they didn't specify a number here, but they would need to know to make provisions, because when we go to the retreat, it's not like we're going to tell when we get to Nevis, we will tell these people, well, here we'll go back on the boat, the water taxi, and go back to the hotel and so on. And when we're ready, you all will come back. Because you would have had to make arrangements to provide meals for them and so on, because they're there. They are required to stay there for the duration that the person who they are protecting is there. They are there for protection. That's why they allow them to come. So they would be staying there, and obviously they're not going to sit down all day and starve. So you have to set aside refreshments, and you need to know how many people you're catering for. So if the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago knew she was not going, right, then Sobers has no security detail. So did they convey any information to the Secretariat to let them know this is how many security personnel Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar is going to have, so that they could provide refreshments, meals, and whatever else accommodation for these people? They needed to know this information beforehand. And as I said, if Sobers was going to represent Prasad-Bissessar, well, then he is just he himself and himself. He has no security detail. He doesn't require any protection. When Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar came back to Trinidad on the night before, her security detail would have gone back with her. And again, they would have known, because when you booked the flights, you had to book flights for her security people as well. So they knew well in advance, before she went to St. Kitts and Nevis, that she was not going to be staying, because you had to book flights also for her security detail to come back with her on the night of the 25th. But somebody, it seems, didn't think it fit to let the Secretariat know that she was not going to be attending. So we know this wasn't a last-minute decision that they made. I said, all right, so as you go. This decision wasn't made on the 25th or the 24th. 24th of February, 8:55 a.m. Program of work for the meeting, which was agreed with. The chair in the evening of the 23rd of February emailed including details of order in which agenda items would be discussed. The program of work included the following. 10 a.m., this is the retreat. 20th meeting of CARICOM Committee of Ambassadors, CARICOM delegation. Communique, committee meeting. Official photograph of CARICOM heads of government, which is a standard thing that is done. So Prasad-Bissessar should have known. They're taking a picture of all the CARICOM heads in their shirts. You would be missing from the photo. Heads retreat. 10 a.m. Item 11, geopolitical developments. CARICOM heads of government only. Again, stated here, CARICOM heads only. So many opportunities for Prasad-Bissessar to seek clarification on whether or not she would be required to attend, or if she could send a proxy. Doesn't seem that clarification was ever sought. Because for her to tell someone, well, yeah, you stay back and for the rest of this thing and you go, means that the expectation was that he could go. But you didn't seek confirmation on that. Because if you did, then there would have been no need for Sobers to be asking that question at the 11th hour. Item number 12, financing and governance of the community. So here it is that at the retreat, the two items to be discussed: geopolitical developments, financing and governance of the community. Geopolitical developments. For the last how many months, Prasad-Bissessar talking about the Caribbean is not a zone of peace. That is fakery in the bakery. All of these developments taking place with respect to Venezuela, the radar, the situation with respect to visas being revoked, US visas of certain high-level officials in certain governments being revoked, and so on. Geopolitical developments. You are the one who was going all over the place saying, no zone of peace. It had no zone of peace. The Caribbean is not a zone of peace. I don't know what CARICOM. You know that it was reported that there were tensions. And the one day that you were there, no discussion was had about these things. So obviously, if you looked at the agenda, there is at some point where this has to be discussed at that level. Just the 15 of us. Not the whole room where she went up on stage and buff up this one and buff up that one and, play herself and then drop mic and walk off and go on, head back up the road. No. So where was your concern? If you were so you felt that what you said on stage, that was sufficient? You had nothing else to say. There was nothing more to say. You made your point that this didn't need to be discussed on a more granular level where there could be an exchange so you could explain your position better, why it is that you see that. Because when you were on stage and you said what you said, you gave a speech, there was no opportunity for any rebuttal from anybody. There was no opportunity for people to express their views on it and for you to express yours and come to some sort of mutual position. So that is the purpose. If she was really concerned about getting her position across and the position of her government with respect to CARICOM not being a zone of peace and everything else, all the other things that she was supporting, geopolitical developments, the bombing of the boats, the so-called narco boats. This was her first opportunity to speak directly to one-on-one, face-to-face with her CARICOM colleagues. So just that headline alone, that agenda item alone, geopolitical developments, should have been sufficient for Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar to understand she needed to attend the retreat. If anybody if there was one prime minister who should not have absented themselves just because of that agenda item and what they have been advocating since she became prime minister, she should have been there. And if she, for whatever reason, couldn't be there, she should have prepared some sort of brief for Sobers to speak on this matter. So either one of them needed to be there. Neither one. And clearly Sobers had no brief. So there was nothing that Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar wanted to articulate and to get across in respect of geopolitical developments. Financing and governance of the community. Other issues as raised. Just those 3 items. Just those 3. But she didn't see it important for her to stick around. So, as far as she knows, when she left St. Kitts on the night of the 25th, or the evening of the 25th, she didn't know where Sobers was going, what was going to happen. Nothing. She just jumped on a plane and came back to Trinidad. What was the urgency for her to return to Trinidad? Nothing. She came back. The next day, she chaired cabinet as normal. There were no any earth-shattering decisions taken at cabinet that day that she needed to be there. Nothing. Right? She didn't come to a press conference after the cabinet to say, we took this decision today and so on. So no appearance. Last time we saw the prime minister speak at a post-cabinet press conference, I think was sometime in June last year. So what was so important that you needed to come back to Trinidad? Absolutely nothing. So you came back the Wednesday, the Thursday, okay, you chair cabinet, Friday came to Parliament, no biggie. Nothing of note, really. You didn't come to say, well, okay, let me make a statement. Nothing. So why couldn't you have stayed an extra day? Go to the retreat and come back on the night of the 26th. Why did you need to come back on the evening of the 25th? Would it have killed you to stay for just a few more hours? Not a whole day. You didn't need to stay till Friday. Go to the retreat. The retreat would have probably finished like maybe 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, even if you go 4 o'clock. You could have taken a flight in the night, come back home the same way you did on the evening of Wednesday the 25th. One extra day would have killed you. You so needed to come back to chair cabinet. On the morning of the 25th of February, Conference Services also circulated a copy of the draft agenda and the program of work for each delegation after the media had left the room after the opening of the meeting. If head of delegation was not in the room, Then the person in the seat, usually a minister, would receive the documentation. Extra copies were also provided to other members of the delegations in the second row. And then they go on to, on the 22nd of February, this is what was sent. Retreat arrangements. Immediate. The attention of the heads of government is drawn to the following information provided by the government of St. Kitts and Nevis with regard to the arrangements for the retreat scheduled for Thursday, 26 February. So if at that time, Sobers knew that he suffers from seasickness, and he knew that Pasabi Sessa was not going to be there and that, because let me say this, right? I am certain that at least by the 22nd of February, Sean Sobers was well aware that Mrs. Pasabi Sessa would not be staying over in St. Kitts, despite the fact that the media reported she was going to return to the country on Friday. Sobers knew that he was going to be in St. Kitts and Nevis because it was reported that he was coming back on the Friday, and I think he did come back on the Friday. So what did he think he was going to be doing in St. Kitts and Nevis on the Thursday and the Friday during the day? What did he expect to do that his flight was booked for him to come back Friday? Well, he thought it was a vacation. That when the Prime Minister left on Thursday night, on Wednesday night, that the rest that he was just going to be there to relax for the next 2 days? Because I'm trying to understand why you would need to send a WhatsApp message to the, or speak or call, no, not a message, call the Secretary General on the same night that the Prime Minister left to ask if you should come to the retreat. So it's taxpayers' money paid for the extra night, I'm assuming, the extra night that you would have spent at the hotel, or the extra 2 nights. Because the Wednesday night, you would have stayed at the hotel. The Thursday night, and you left Friday. Taxpayers' money. We are not paying, taxpayers are not paying money for you to go on Galavant and take a vacation in St. Kitts and Nevis. So what did you think you were going to do? Did you work with suitable attire? Did you have an extra suit because you expected to go to this retreat? In light of the fact that you knew well ahead that the CARICOM shirt was supposed to have been worn at this event, all right? Did you make any inquiries as to, okay, what will I wear since I'm going to this event to represent the Prime Minister? Or did you plan, well, okay, I will wear the same suit that I wore to the event before, or the 2 days before? Nothing wrong with that. But I mean, people seeing you in the same suit for 3 straight days. So what exactly was in Sobers' mind? What did he plan to do on the Thursday? Because if the only plan was to go to the retreat, there would be no need to call the Secretary General to ask if you should come. It is understood. You are representing the Prime Minister, you have something to say, you have a prepared brief, so you have to go. There's no question like that. So, should I come? And if they said no, so what's the alternative? So you already had plans in place, thing to do. What do you do on the Friday? I just ask, I'm curious. Because you knew there was a prepared agenda and there was thing to do on the Tuesday, and you knew the Prime Minister was leaving the Wednesday night, and you would have to represent. So what? Anyway, attire. Custom, locally designed and made dress shirts will be given to each head on arrival to their hotel room. These shirts are to be worn for the retreat, perhaps with a khaki or dark colored bottom, but this is not strictly necessary. Venue, private villa at the Four Seasons Resort in Nevis. Transportation. 5 private water taxis have been commissioned to transport heads to and from Park Hyatt St. Kitts to the Four Seasons Resort. These will be escorted via the St. Kitts and Nevis Coast Guard and will be under security protection while docked awaiting to return to St. Kitts. Estimated time between the 2 ports should be approximately 10 to 15 minutes. Welcome, the Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley, will greet heads on arrival. Attendees, only heads of government plus their close protection detail and other security personnel as needed, and the CARICOM Secretary General. Time of departure will be confirmed. Regards, Janice Miller, Chef de Cabinet, Office of the Secretary General. So on several occasions, right, correspondence was sent emphasizing that the retreat was for heads only, heads only, heads only. So at no point in time with any of these correspondence did it ever occur to the Prime Minister, Sean Sobers, or anybody else to confirm with the Secretariat, the CARICOM, whether or not Mr. Sobers would be allowed to represent the Prime Minister. And if so, they would need a shirt for him, because Kamala's shirt can't fit him. When she received her shirt, when she got there, and as it said there that the shirt would be dropped off at your hotel room, when she got the shirt, up to that time, clearly there was an expectation by the CARICOM Secretariat that she was going to be attending. At any point in time, did she inform Prime Minister Drew, Secretary General Carla Barnett, or anybody else that she would not be attending the retreat? That she would be leaving on the night of Wednesday, the 25th? Did she inform them of what the alternative arrangements would be, that Mr. Sobers would be representing her, so that he could find out if he needed a shirt? But of course, by that time, it's too late. So that he would not be part of the official photograph. We don't want him standing up there in a suit and everybody else in the shirt and he looking like a square peg. Did any of that take place? I highly doubt it. Hmm. 24th of the 2nd, 8:55 a.m. Office of the Prime Ministers, Presidents, Ministers of Foreign Affairs. The Secretariat forwards for the attention of member states and associate members the attached program of work for the 50th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads. And then they have the whole agenda here. Right. So we see here there were two persons in particular who Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar would have been interested in meeting. Her Excellency Noura Al-Kabi, Minister of State at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, United Arab Emirates. His Excellency Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, United States of America. And then there would have been brief presentations by the Afri-Exim Bank, which we know has been trying to set up shop in Trinidad and Tobago for the longest while. But there were some challenges with their application, since we were told by the previous Prime Minister, or as the government refers to him, the former, that they were requesting that their employees pay no taxes, whether local, and the local employees as well, trainees who would be working for the bank, that they pay no taxes, as well as their foreign employees. And as Dr. Oli would have indicated, that would have been a challenge, because we have other international entities that operate in Trinidad and they've been granted no such tax concession. So if they were to acquiesce to that request from the Afri-Exim Bank, it could cause problems. So these other entities now coming to say, well, since you gave them that concession, we wanted to for our workers. So just asking, yeah. So here we are. All right. So this back and forth, all this bacchanal and so on between Trinidad and Tobago and CARICOM. But it'll be interesting, because the government has now taken the position that unless and until they get responses to suit what they've been requesting, they want certain documents and this, that, the other, and the next, that they will not be participating in any CARICOM meetings going forward until that is treated with. But yet you did not attend the meeting on Friday. You had the time to do so. You did not attend. Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar in a few months is going to assume chairmanship of CARICOM for a period of 6 months. And it will be interesting to see how that works out. Clearly, there's going to be friction, because it appears it's a done deal that Carla Barnett is going to be reappointed as CARICOM Secretary General. So there would be most likely friction between Chairman Prasad-Bissessar and Secretary General Barnett. So we wait to see if Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar is going to take up that appointment. Well, when you're in charge, you're the chairman, you could demand anything you want. All documents that you want, you could get it. So what's the issue? Ah, boy. Tell you these people, yes. But that is the tale of Trinidad and Tobago right now. Yeah, that's diplomacy, UNC style. Courtesy Kamala Prasad Bisesa. That's where we are. Yeah, right now we're back up there, the pinnacle of CARICOM, Trinidad and Tobago. So this loudmouth loud. Let me get it here. See, let me get it. And then meanwhile, up at on the other end of the front, while I get in this, we see oil prices are set to rise again because President of the United States, Iran and the US have failed in their first round to come to some sort of agreement for a ceasefire that is acceptable to both parties. And so Mr. Trump has now ordered the US Navy to establish a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, so no ships would be allowed to pass through. All right? So whereas now Iran is allowing certain ships to pass through, I think, and they pay a fee, and that it is allowing or enabling some level of oil to get through. If the US Navy undertakes a blockade, then no oil is going to get through, and the price of oil is going to skyrocket. So again, you have to worry, all the government getting money, man. Tanku smiling, Taxku smiling from air to air. That deficit, that $19 billion deficit that he was facing, all of a sudden it's shrinking. Never mind the fact, though, a chunk of that money is being eaten up by subsidies, because higher oil prices means higher fuel prices, and we are importing our fuel, and eventually the price that we pay at the pump is going to be less than what it's costing the government to import a liter of fuel. And that difference, unless Tanku decides that he's going to take back the $1 reduction that he gave you all, he'll take it back and jack back up the price, which he's not going to. How that will look? Okay, you take that away and basically the country got nothing of benefit of substance from the budget, because a lot of the measures that they mentioned are yet to be implemented. Chief among them was the promise that private pensions would not be taxed. That was supposed to come in force in January. We are now in April. Still hasn't come in force. The government is now 4 months in arrears with the implementation of that. And the latest we heard from the minister, well, it is before cabinet. So you put a measure in the budget. You said it was going to come into force effective January 1, 2026. And now coming to tell us, well, you know, it has some little issues that we have to sort out. So the 5 months that you were in office before you read the budget, you didn't know to do your research to determine, well, these are the challenges that this measure is likely to encounter, which could impede its implementation. So I need to hold back. You didn't know that? So was this a last minute thing that you came at? You said, well, yeah, but Israel blows we share in here in this budget, you know. All these new taxes, sorry, not taxes. For 10 years under the PNM, we made the word tax an obscenity. So we can't use that word. So we will use levy and surcharge. But a tax by any other name is still a tax. But them calling it levy and surcharge. And you realize it's wood. The only thing we giving them here is this $1 reduction in the price of super. Nothing else of benefit. Everything else we jamming them. We reducing the subsidy on cooking gas, the 100-pound cylinders, and we know that that is going to result in an increase in the price of restaurant food. All right, what else we have here, boy? Landlord surcharge, the bank and insurance company levy, all these things. Yeah, increase in tire tax. All these fines, we're going to increase the fines. We're doubling the fines, so it's 100% increase. Hey, sir. All right, let me get them something to hold. No tax on private pensions. Yay! So all the pensioners happy. I say, well, all right, well, no tax. So that's a little extra kakada I could afford now to buy the medication for my glaucoma, my cataract, my diabetes, and whatever else I have. Okay, a little extra money, I could save a little something. January, nothing. February, nothing. March, nothing. April, nothing. Media intervened, called the minister. He sent a message. It is before cabinet. We're still working out the logistics... Right. working out logistics. Wayne Gibson is saying, what about people who already paid their property tax? Taxes is supposed to be refunded. And Kamala say, I don't know nothing about that. I see this clown Zuku saying we are happier and lighter now that the PNM no longer exists. Are you an idiot? The PNM still very much exists. Okay? We have 13 members in the House. Over 224,000 persons voted for the People's National Movement. And there are tens of thousands now who wish they did. So rock so with that nonsense about the PNM no longer exists. Well, let's come from. I don't normally block people, you know, but right now you caught in a block. Trust me on that. Continue with your nonsense. Anyway. No where let's come from. Nonsense. Nothing of substance. Come here and tell us 2 things of substance your government did that the PNM that you could say we can't refute and say the PNM did that. Tell us 2 things now that your government has done in the last 11 months to benefit the country. Tell us. Nothing of substance. You get SOE. Constant SOE. That's the only crime plan. 100 murders for the year. Coming to talk nonsense, you're feeling lighter. Tens of thousands of people without work who had jobs under the PNM now suffering. Right? But you feeling lighter. But clearly you weren't one of those. Well, I'll tell you something. You might be feeling lighter. But I see those tens of thousands, 40, 50,000 people who lost their job from CPEP, URP, Forestry, HTC, WASA, and so on. They're not feeling lighter, sir. They're feeling very heavy. When they look at their wallet and there's no money to buy food. When they look at their bank account and there's no money to pay bills and nothing coming in at the end of the month. And all how they're looking for work, they can't find. So they're not feeling lighter. If you feeling lighter, good for you. Sure. Anyway. Right. Now play this. Daniel. Yeah. Yes. See if I get this here. 354 comments. This is a post from St. Kitts Nevis and St. Kitts Nevis Rhythm. That's the name of the profile, right? And is saying you look for that, Anil. They check you and want to talk about PM Drew, that pick all over the world, biggest. Well, I can't say that word on. It's not podcast friendly. Oh Lord, I tell you. And of course, you know, it has some dumb Chinese who will try to jump in the comments too. You have drunkards running your country. Maybe that's why you all have a state of emergency. Take away the bottle from those drunkards. Another one says, the UNC government continues to use taxpayers' money to pay persons of ill repute to badmouth anyone who is not aligned to their not so hidden agenda. Another one says, well, you think this is bad? What about the one where he rolling up the devil's lettuce? Another one says, the most disrespectful government and their ministers. Let me see if I get this here. Let's see. One saying he apologized. Let's see if I get it right. Somebody talking about the accusation of him interfering with some 16-year-old. Okay. Another one says, follow your leader. I wonder who's the leader they're talking about. Tony, well, he says, he looking like he drunk. You didn't see that. That is a rum face. So, right. I can't say that. Can't say that one either. Oh boy. Right. Some of these are petitions, right? There's another one where he is. Let me see if I find that one. Right. This is the St. Kitts and Nevis Times.
The whole of St. Kitts and Nevis should be ashamed of you right now. I don't know you. I never met you. I didn't read about you. And all I know is that right now, so you lie. Dr. Terence Drew, you are an embarrassment. The whole of St. Kitts and Nevis should be ashamed of you right now. I don't know you. I never met you. I didn't read about you. And all I know is that right now, so you lie. Most people with 8.
So Dr. Drew came to Trinidad and Tobago just before this heads of government meeting in February. In fact, he came to the Parliament. He sat to the right of the Speaker. The Speaker did announce his presence with his delegation, and the Speaker asked us to, all of us in the House, to acknowledge and recognize the presence of Dr. Drew, which we did by thumping our desk. So when I hear this clown saying, I don't know you, I never meet you, I never hear about you, okay, but you know about Ralph Gonzalez? Someone says, please ignore this man. He's an embarrassment to Trinidad and Tobago, never sober, always drunk, and one of Kamala's mouthpieces. He is no strategist. He is a minister in the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and he speaks on behalf of them. Another one says, we are sorry for this out-of-place Enal Roberts behavior. Go Google him and you should understand why not to pay this junkie any mind, no attention. He represents himself and the UNC. He does not represent Trinidad and Tobago. Another one says, but yet still we're making pronouncements in Antigua politics. Another one says, you should be ashamed to talk, but I guess dog eat it. Another one says, I thought the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago told her ministers to stay in their lane. Otherwise, oh well. Another one says, this approach is not conducive to diplomacy for any government official. How does expressing oneself in such an ungoverned manner contribute to effective diplomatic relations? Someone says, as a Trinbagonian, I would like to trade him, Roger and Philip Alexander, please. Another one says, what is this man's role in the politics of Trinidad? Is he a yard fowl or something? I hope he receives whatever he's striving for. Another one says, Anil, why don't you HYSMC? And if I see you in person, I will tell you what HYSMC means. Another one says, he out of order. Someone asks, is this how ministers of government in Trinidad and Tobago behave? $400 and something comments. Most of them critical. Another one says, you don't even know the man, you never even know him, but you come on social media talking BS, all your good we. Another one says, so now we're on Facebook lambasting another Caribbean personality. Is this the way things are done now? Stoops. The people that nobody vote for on the UNC side making the most noise. He trying to outdo Trump. First it was Dr. Ralph, then Dr. Drew. Who will be next? The next doctor? Look out, Dr. Ali. I hope not the doctor in Jamaica. So another one says, go away. You don't know Dr. Drew because you dead. You don't have to read about great men. They just show up. And it goes on and on like that, right? So this man is quoting criticism of Trinidad and Tobago. And all these people have to do is say, well, you know what, we boycotting Trinidad and Tobago products. The last time they were in office, they mess up the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and CARICOM. They come back again with the same nonsense. Same nonsense. You know, Dr. Rowley had to go and fix it when he first became Prime Minister. had to go to Jamaica to deal with that. Now, whoever comes after them, assuming if we're still in CARICOM by that time, we'll see how that goes. Let me see. See here. All right. What's the time there? Oh my, 4:18. Brian, where are you? I just have a 10 minutes again. Slimy Show is saying, talk about the MREs that the government that got delivered to the TTDF. Are they preparing to send training troops to the Middle East? Well, Slimy Show, one of the possible explanations that I saw being bandied about is that perhaps the United States anticipated that the campaign against Venezuela would have been a bit longer and perhaps a lot more, a little more action than it did. And in fact, I was listening to Mr. Trump just the other day, a couple of days ago, and he was talking about that they were really expecting more of a fight from Venezuela, right? They didn't expect that it would have been so clinical, so easy. And he said that what had happened was that the Venezuelan equipment, that their guns and whatever, their weapons didn't work. And maybe in time to come, he will tell the world why their equipment didn't work. And that contributed to why there wasn't serious conflict in respect of what happened on January 3rd. He indicated that there was the expectation that there was going to be a second wave, right? So it means that Mr. Trump and the US intelligence agencies or army or whoever expected something similar to happen with Venezuela as we are seeing now with Iran. They were probably thinking it might have dragged on for maybe a few days, a week, because of all the tough talk that you were hearing from Venezuela. And had it not been for, based on what he is seeing, certain things taking place, that very well would have happened, right? That Venezuela was caught unawares. So he said. So all was beaten up on the PNM, or the PNM talking about war and that thing and missile, and if a missile pelt. Trump is saying to us, or said to us a few days ago, they were expecting that. That is what they thought would have happened. Right? And so perhaps all these rations now that and these MREs that they've given to our soldiers is probably what they had planned to give to their soldiers who were here. And if there was an expectation that there would have been a need for an additional deployment, and since the conflict didn't really last for more than a few hours, well, it done on this side of the world anyway. So why bring it back to the US or send it somewhere and incur cost with free? Just give it to the Trinidad and Tobago Army. Let them eat it. Our boys don't need it. We have a lot. So, Brian.
But I send plenty food. As if we're hungry.
Yes.
I thought they would have sent a military helicopter, some military binoculars or firearms, special firearms, or special equipment or something. But imagine that after all of this, after we bend over, not we, but this government bend over.
Brad, they him say,
the United States.
They him say, well, all right, keep that radar. All they get so much cost for it, they might as well keep it. They take it and go on with it.
So you send a set of food and telling us that's 1,200 calories,
Yeah.
So they must watch our poor military and say, them looking like they're undernourished. We send some food. So imagine that. What a shame.
Or some of them.
A shame.
Or some of those soldiers can start to lose some weight. 1,200 calories.
Whatever. Maybe they didn't healthier food.
Yeah.
At 1,200 calories,
Yeah.
What a shame. No military helicopter. No special equipment.
Nothing.
For them to use. All this sort of training they get. And that this government said that they come to train our men. And what? Food? That is the chance we get. Food? And the government happy about it? And nobody ain't talking about that? They said food, I keep we starving in Trinidad and Tobago. I tell him we have 1,200 calories and it goes last longer while they in the field. What a crying shame. Pleasant good afternoon to you and you remain. Pleasant good afternoon to your listeners and callers. If you remain,
yes, sir.
I have some concerns. One of them is you explained in great detail all of the correspondence that was received by the government and the representatives in Trinidad and Tobago vis-a-vis the 50th CARICOM meeting of the heads of government. And I think it was self-explanatory up to even long before you were finished, to me. And if it is, the Honorable Prime Minister knew, as far as I am concerned, I think she did, I am of the view that she did, that she was not staying beyond Wednesday. Right? And if Minister Sobers stayed there until Friday, I would have loved somebody in the minute to ask Minister Sobers, so what did you do with Thursday and Friday, sir? What did you do? Were you just going about shopping with me? And if it is alleged he carried his family at the expense of taxpayers, when the most important part of that CARICOM heads of government meeting was what would have taken place amongst the heads, and the Honorable Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago would have been fully aware because she would have experienced it before. It's not a first rodeo at a CARICOM meeting like this. So she would have known, or she ought to have known, even based on the information she would have received, as well as the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. So they knew. And I am of the firm view, because the last thing I heard on the news was that she is saying that she will have nothing more to do with CARICOM unless she gets a particular type of explanation with respect to what transpired with the re-election of the CARICOM's Secretary General. But a good friend from Guyana indicated this was the same process that was done 5 years ago when he was there with respect to the election of the Secretary General, and nothing has changed. So what is he going to do now? Stop talking to the President of Guyana? Or she would have nothing to say. And it's not a wonder why. But we will have to wait and see, because I know what road she wants to go down.
Yes.
I know what road, and she's ably supported by her Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. So we all know. We're just waiting for the shoe to drop. That's all. And we will then be certain that is the way they always want to put it. That is where it is leading for me. The next thing is, I await to see who is going to be on this high diplomatic delegation that is going to Venezuela, and who they're going to speak to. If they're going to knock on the palace door and say, hey, Delcy, we have to talk to you, girl. We have to talk about we share. I want to see who's going to be in this high diplomatic team, who's going to lead the team. And since we have, as far as I understand, we have no ambassador as yet in Venezuela, who is going to speak to the new president of Venezuela? And yes, she is the president, not interim, because the minister was ashamed to even say that is the president. He's not acknowledging that they recognize her, simply because now they realize they have to track back and talk to her about the same dead dragon gas that they now so desperately want. Because as I have told you all before, and you have said it as well, we have a problem for gas. Part of Plindeco has been downgraded to junk bond status. And Nutrient is not going to come back unless they are almost certain they're going to get their full complement of gas, as well as all of the other things that were offered to them prior to this government getting into office. I wait to see MP
mean. I wait to see what is going to happen, because the longer they take to go to Venezuela, Shell and BP are going headlong without rest in negotiating their position for their shareholders. And what we are going to get, what we should have been getting, will not be what we will maybe at the end of the day may be getting eventually. Thank God Atlantic LNG is there. Because I recall, you didn't mention it, but I recall before Dr. Rowley and Stuart Young negotiated for us to get 10% shares of the various, all the trains, Shell and BP were only using trains 2 and 3 because we had a share in 1 and 4. And they were not using those trains. We didn't have shares in 2 and 3. Dr. Rowley recognized that. And therefore he said, listen, we want to own a 10% in all 4 trains. But it would have been 3 because train 1 would have been shut down and mothballed. And I could remember when the then opposition government got on with us, with the government, and said that the $240 million you all wasted on train 1. But today, that same train 1 may have to come back into service because of the petroleum gas that may have to come through. It may not be enough for trains 2, 3, and 4. And that is where they will be getting some of their monies from. But they are ashamed to say, because they have done nothing, absolutely nothing, to come and idly boast about giving out dividends, and the share price has gone up since they have been there, and this and that and the other. But if you ask them, that you tell us what you did in order to ensure that you made a profit of $3.8 billion. Tell us what you did. They will never see. But you see, they continue to live off the fact of what previous government did when they were there, the previous work. When Georgia was running to Venezuela 13 times and they were complaining about, what is he doing there all the time? Why delegate to come across here? Now we know why. Now Trinidad and Tobago, if they were true to admit it to us and to themselves, now they know why. These are the benefits of why Trinidad and Tobago was going headstrong, because they foresaw what was going to happen and what would be going on. They foresaw that we did not have enough gas in our fields to continue to support the downstream petrochemical industries, and that we will need help from neighboring Venezuela, who has these trillions of cups of gas. And that is why the negotiations have to be done in that particular way. So they are just going to reap the reward. But at the end of the day, I want to see what Delcy is going to say. Maybe she is more diplomatic than they are. I may very well, accommodate them. But it is left to be seen. Another thing I have to tell Trinidad and Tobago and those listening. I said on Saturday on the barbershop that the Joshua Samaru case, the shooting that took place, the killing that took place with the police officers in January, the file has not as yet been sent to the DPP. It's going on almost 4 months now that the Joshua Samaru case, that what we saw via the CCTV camera, when we got a different story from the Commissioner of Police, that case is not yet before the DPP. Just this week, a few days ago, Dominic, there was a killing in Sumat Gardens of one Stephen Gani by a relative of his. A minister in this government indicated that that gentleman was a friend of his. The lady was arrested. Attorneys, this, that, the other, and so on and so on. We have been hearing stories as to her trials and tribulations, alleged trials and tribulations and so on. That is not my concern. That is not my concern, MP Rumi. My concern is that as of this morning, Sunday, the 12th, Amaru's case has not even reached the DPP's office as yet. It has not reached his desk as yet. But, and that is nearly 4 months old, but this relative of Stephen Ghani, the file has already been on the DPP's desk a few days ago, and she has been released pending further investigation. Trinidad and Tobago, why am I saying this? It is for all of us, we, the small people in Trinidad and Tobago, to look and observe. There's one law for you and one law for others. A word to the wise as far as that is concerned. Her innocence or guilt is not for me to discern. That is not my business. That is for the law to deal with. But I'm showing you how fast things can be done when they want it to be done, and how some things can be dragged when sometimes the person who may be involved, some may be of importance and some are not. Just a little thing to think about. And my final thing I want to talk about, Dominic, I have a very, very, very serious concern, and the Honorable MP Stuart Young raised it in one of the, I think it was last week, because this is a new week, about this company that Patriotic Services, not Patriotic Energies anymore, but they have Patriotic Energies on the side, them owing plenty money, right? But Patriotic Services is involved with this company, and somebody is contributing $50 million for this forensic survey to be done on the refinery. And I've almost something I heard the Honorable MP Stuart Young indicate, or somebody indicated to me, that this company is in court with some Russian firm. I do not know. I do not have those facts, but I heard. I am very, very afraid of if somebody is putting out $50 million, that there's more to the motor than the pistol. And say that this government has indicated that they have a hands-off approach on what Patriotic Services is doing when they are corporation sole. I am very, very frightened that if things, and I hope it doesn't, because we need that refinery to restart. We need it to restart. It will help San Fernando people, South people, and it will also help Trinidad and Tobago as far as foreign exchange is concerned. If we can get the right person to repair, upgrade, and run the refinery, I will be all the more happy. But I have my concerns, and I hope to God that for once I am wrong, and that this will bear fruit. But I am very, very worried because questions are being asked by the former Minister of Energy, and there are no answers to come. And all of a sudden, Dominic, everything now is NDA. 3 months. They don't want us to know anything. But things are happening. They're begging nutrient. They say it that way. They put it that way. They say they negotiated. But it's begging. I know that. And there's a lot of begging going on. A lot of things happening, and we are not being made aware. But what in the dark will eventually come to light. And when it does, I hope Trinidad and Tobago, like what we found out in September of 2015, when a new government took over, that we don't end up coming to the realization of how really bad things are for Trinidad and Tobago, and we have gone back another 20 years. And this time, the hole may be so deep that we may not get us of it in our lifetime. That is my concern for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And those who are already suffering and who have lost their jobs, it may be very difficult for them to recover from that, if that is what is happening. I hope not. I pray not. very, very much. Have a good afternoon.
You too, sir. Right, but I would just also add, right, that while the Prime Minister didn't have the time or she didn't see the need to go to the retreat in St. Kitts and Nevis, 1 week later, just about a week or so later, when she went to Doral in Florida to spend an hour and a half with Trump, because according to international media reports, that's how long the Shield of America summit lasted. So Trump was in the Doral Hotel for an hour and a half, during which time he took individual photos and group photos with the delegates. He did his feature address, and then he sat down and signed whatever document, the agreement, and then handed out some pens, and he left. So she went to Doral for an hour and a half with Mr. Trump, and then she stayed on and she had discussions with Energy Secretary, Treasury Secretary, Commerce Secretary. I think they probably had some little event afterwards. And for 3 days, the Prime Minister stayed in Florida, right? She couldn't spend more than 2 days in St. Kitts and Nevis. But she had time to go to Florida and go to Joy's Roti Shop, and we'll talk and receive some award or something like that from, I think, the mayor or something. So that was more important. You couldn't sit down for a few hours in a retreat with your CARICOM colleagues, the first time you met them in person since you became Prime Minister. First opportunity to discuss matters that should have been important to you, since you were making an issue about it, the issue of geopolitical developments and finance and governance. That wasn't important. But going to Joy's Roti Shop, we're here. That was important. Talk to the diaspora. That was important. What came out of that? How did the country benefit from that visit to Joy's Roti Shop, to big up Joy's Roti Shop? I say, well, hey, Kamala endorsed Joy's Roti Shop, so hey, we had to go there and taste that roti. If Kamala said good, it had to be good. That's what was important to her, that she could spend an extra 3 days in Florida after the official duties were finished in the space of an hour and a half. Ole Prime Minister. Yeah, but Ole had plenty of things to say about Rowley. Rowley this and Rowley that. And Brian mentioned the issue of the appointment of an ambassador for Trinidad and Tobago to Venezuela. Since October last year, SOBA said they were trying to appoint an ambassador from Trinidad and Tobago to Venezuela. Here we are in April, they still haven't done it. 7 months. So the process is we had to send some, whatever credentials, and it has to be authorized or approved by next door. So is it a case that next door not even entertaining that? Next door not interested in any relations with this government? So has that been the holdup? Because I would think that was a priority, right? 7 months later, and you still can't appoint. Just like he claimed he had the answer. And I think in the first month or so, he said that he had the answer, the solution to removing the visa requirement for Trinidad and Tobago citizens to go to the UK. Almost a year later, you still need a visa to go to the UK. Come to the Parliament last week, Friday, to talk a pack of nonsense about the reason why and the PNM government didn't do this and they didn't do that, and you're going to buy something in Pennywise for you and for you and for you. I thought you had the answer, sir. Where is that answer? Blowing in the wind? You had the solution. Almost a year later, still nothing. I thought when he came to the Parliament Friday, he was going to come and tell us, well, look, we had discussion, we ironed it out, and this is what is what, and therefore the visa requirement will be removed and such and such. It's just like Alexander's crime plan, the plan to get Trinidad and Tobago off of that, well, the removal of the visa requirement is a work in progress. Work in progress. As is basically everything else under this government, a work in progress. But we'll see how all of these things go. And I see that, let me see here, boy. Another one of the trolls has arrived. Talking about now you're all concerned about South. Oh, Marians, why you don't study what all the things Kamala took away from South? The UNC has taken away from South. What's going on with the waterfront project? Hines, Omari Hines. What's going on? Any work taking place there? When the PNM demitted office, it was an active construction site. What is taking place there now? Nothing. It's just like, a deserted project. They're waiting on somebody to come and say, yeah, all right, we will take it up. So all the people who were looking forward to getting employment there, we're going on with them. Advocate for that now. Well, PNM do nothing in South and the PNM, you all going to your whole waterfront, with housing and all kind of things. I'm not saying none of that. And they come and they abandon it. Nothing happening there. No work. All who was working on the side, nothing solved. But you wouldn't talk about that. All you complained for 10 years. 10 years you all complained about how the PNM refused to open the Kuva Children's Hospital out of spite and malice. That's what you all said. Now, this government has come in. Is it open? They did a commissioning, but is it open? They come in to tell you, well, we had to do it on a phase basis because we don't have the nurses, we don't have the doctors, we don't have staff. We need to recruit people for the different machines and so on, and we need to train them and technicians and all of that. So you have no clue as to when that facility will be fully operational. So just as the PNM was doing, they were sending people from other hospitals there to do certain surgeries and so on, to use some of the equipment there to run scans. It's the same thing this government is doing, right? But the hospital still isn't fully operational. But meantime, that building, and I'll keep talking about that building at the corner of Chadwick Road and Victoria Avenue that was supposed to house the Ministry of the People and Social Development headquarters. Right now, the Ministry of the People and Social Development headquarters is operating out of a building that is owned by Zaman Enterprises, which is the relatives, the in-laws of Faris Al-Rawi. You all complained for 10 years about how much money Faris collecting in rent and Faris family collecting in rent, and already doing all kind of calculations, right? That's what you all were doing. And now, the PNM, not the UNC, the PNM took the step to construct a building to house the very ministry that is operating out of the same Faris building, to move them out into the government-owned premises, so no more rent going to Faris. Your government stopped that project. The building was well advanced. For those who work in Port of Spain and who know the building that I'm talking about, that right now is just covered with this green mesh, right? They had reached as far as starting to put up the glass exterior, the windows and all of those things, right? It stopped. The pace at which that project was going, if the PNM had won election in April last year, that building would have been almost completed, if not completed by now. It has been stalled for the last year. Nothing happening. And the government say, well, it's under review. It takes a whole year to review. Okay? In the meantime, what happened? All the people who were working on that project, who were employed, out of work for the last few months, because the contractor would have wrapped up whatever little bit, whatever work would have been covered by whatever monies they would receive up until that point in time, and that's it. So everything locked down. That building is now looking as an eyesore. We have no idea what's going to happen. You're driving into City Gate, you're in the Maxi, and just before you enter City Gate, right, on the right-hand side, there's this 3 or 4 story block, concrete block building, incomplete, that was supposed to house the homeless, the destitute, the people that UNC supporters or they click out the PNM posting up videos and memes all the time of vagrants lying down in front of RBC and lying down in front of Republic Bank and Scotia Bank. And if you see downtown looking a mess, PNM decided to build a place for them. This government came in and put it on hold. All of a sudden, all they stopped taking pictures and videos of the same destitute people who still sleeping on the pavement in front of RBC and in front of Republic and in front of Scotia, because for the 10 years under the PNM, it was a problem. But now, it's okay under the UNC. Right? PNM tried to fix it. They stopped it. The government that you all support. But they didn't stop it because of spite and malice. No. They didn't stop it because of that. This is the nonsense that you all encourage, and that is why governance in this country is the way that it is. When you're all in opposition, all you know everything that wrong. But everything this government does now is correct. And I will keep saying, All they want to bash PNM supporters and say, oh, the PNM for 10 years they didn't say nothing, and the government and the PNM government was doing whatever, and the supporters wasn't saying anything. PNM supporters spoke when it mattered most. They stayed away from the polls. They didn't go and vote. That is how they speak. They may remain silent. You may not see them on Facebook cussing the government and so on for the 5 years as you UNC supporters do. But when it is most critical, on election day, that is when they choose to speak. When they can hurt the party the most. That is what they did. Right? That's what they did. So when they want to talk stupidness about the PNM supporters don't say nothing, and this rubbish. We are in opposition today because our supporters decided that they will speak when it matters most. That was on election day. That is why you all are in office today. All right? So we only want to protest and come on Facebook and cuss and rowling mother, so and so, and who this and that, and all of that does what? It does nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm not saying sticks and stones could break my bones, but words could never hurt me. Always come up 10 years. You all wage a campaign on social media. Right? And the PNM supporters did more damage to the PNM than you all ever did in the 10 years that you're talking rubbish. Anyway, see. See. Nonsense talking about the APIS legislation UNC passed last Friday is one step closer to no UK visa requirements. What utter rubbish are you talking about? You cannot be serious. There's a whole year now. This man said that they had the solution, the discussions, the process. You know what? I'm not even going to try to explain anything to you, right? Because apparently all you listen to, all you read is UNC propaganda media. UNC propaganda media. Because if you had listened to the debate on Friday, you would have heard Sean Sober say that the discussion started with the PNM since 2024. Since 2024. We feel when this government just came into office, just all of a sudden things started to happen. Let's talk absolute rubbish. I mentioned before that this whole thing with the advanced passenger legislation, that started under the PNM with CARICOM impacts before the general election. Right? Rohan Sinanan spoke about that. But CARICOM impacts had indicated that they were going to start testing the system. Why you ask your ministers and them to tell us what it cost under them? Why are they keeping that a secret? It was so necessary. Why are they keeping it a secret? Nonsense, yes? Super C is asking about the 600 million. Tanku don't want to talk on that now. He ain't saying anything about that. And they won't say anything, unfortunately. Folks, it was nice. We will chat again soon, all right, because it's almost 5 o'clock. But we'll see how this issue with Trinidad and Tobago's government and CARICOM pans out. It ain't looking too good, right? Because this government seems they want to double down and triple down, as Mrs. Pasabi says often loves to do. All right, they're not budging, and they're only making this thing worse. And clearly, diplomacy, they don't intend to use diplomacy in order to solve it. And I see it as they just laying the groundwork for Pasabi Sessa to say Trinidad and Tobago is leaving CARICOM. But there will be consequences for that. So let them go ahead, ably supported by their cult supporters who don't know any better. And anything the leadership tell them, they will run with and try to defend that. But if the PNM had done the same, it would have been a horse of a different color. But all right. So Super C saying we need to find out somehow. Well, we could raise it in the media review, which is due anytime now. And so probably maybe middle of next month or so, sometime next month, they would Tanko would probably come with that media review, and during the debate, we can raise the issue there. Yeah. But have a productive week, folks. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we will chat again soon. It was nice.